Hello, hello, good evening. Here we go. How are you doing on this fine Monday? Monday! It is Monday once again. How was your first day? How are you doing? Hope you're good. I'm good. I am not used to streaming on a Monday. It's a little weird. It's okay. It's okay. It's a special Monday, I guess. Because of special circumstances on the weekend, the stream has to move. We are back with Taisho Alice. I honestly can't tell how far we actually got last time because I don't understand anymore at this point. Like, you know, Red was so short, then Cinderella was like this so long. So now I'm very confused on how long the rest of the routes are going to be. But, well, let's see what else Gretel has in store for us. I fear he might have some more items to try on, or other clothes, or he will somehow find out that we had a visitor and he'll go, I don't know, batshit crazy. Who knows? Come home, Gretel, that was fast. Sure enough, here he was. I don't have a smile to hide my internal panic. Will you be honest? Also, the other thing is, you know how I said last time that it's like all of the choices are either yes, 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 or no, no, no. I have no clue how many times we said yes the last time. I think we said yes once. So I think I have to be honest with him again. I'm just gonna save. Just in case. Yeah. Me dead. Aww. So I'm working at a car that. Oh. Oh yeah. No clue. No clue about those things. I'd probably be walking around the entire town as well. I answered him honestly and his expression twisted sharply. Oh, he's not. His voice was startlingly icy and made me flinch, but I quickly recovered. Just now, see? Little kitty cat's having trouble saying goodbye. I turned to the window. Outside I could see nothing but dense trees casting shadows in the sunlight. Eh? Sonotori! I couldn't shoot him the finger gun, so I settled for snapping my fingers. Why is it the finger guns? Initially, Gretel seemed somewhat convinced, but then his gaze came to rest on one particular object in the room. What's wrong? Well, I was hungry. Well, I got really hungry. I was starving. I wanted to wait until you got home, but I just couldn't, so I bent over and ate it just like a cat. I hastily stumbled my way through an excuse. How? If you go to school, there is going to be a set amount of time that you absolutely have to be gone. He smirked faintly. Bro. Dream on. I glared at him. Hi dozo. Hold on. Hold on, Mr. Hi dozo. I want to see something. Let me go. Yeah. Let me go back to the title screen for a second. I want to see something. Yeah, we don't need all that. I just want to make sure that that I actually chose the right thing. I wanted to write down how many times I had chosen yes last time, but I forgot, so I'm just gonna do it now. Because like, this guide in and of itself is very nice, but it's kind of awkward when all the choices are only just yes, no, yes, yes, over and over again. Because like, how am I supposed to remember what I already chose? So we're just gonna quickly do this. So I bought a new lamp recently. Yes, I did. And today my only lamp. Oh no! I'm sorry for laughing. That's not good. That's not good that your only lamp in the room broke. Do you have any other lamps you can get from somewhere else? Thank you. I parted my lips and sipped the hot chocolate Gretel had kindly reheated for me. Once I finished my drink, Gretel wiped the corners of my lips with his thumb. You sure came home quick. Did you actually go to school? I don't know. Back home, maybe? I tipped my hat. Oh, okay. I couldn't confirm or deny it. I just hung my head and refused to answer at all. It was one of few options available to me. I looked up to find Gretel's face suddenly very close to mine. I tried to flinch away, but he reached out and cupped both of my cheeks in his hands, preventing my escape. My dad is one. Okay. Well, it's still light out, so you have a few more hours of light still, hopefully. Yeah. I got the feeling there was no point in trying to deny it any further, so instead I came clean. Yeah. I nodded timidly. His tone was surprisingly calm. I blinked. You're not mad? No. No, of course not. Okay, but it's not our fault that someone came to the house, right? His affable smile didn't reach his eyes. It was so intimidating I felt the urge to scoot the whole chair away from him, but couldn't. Please don't. Please don't. I like being able to move around at least a little. But why? What are you trying to protect me from? Who? Demons. Oh, yeah. So you think Mr. Wizard is a demon? But even though I named my wizard outright, Gretel didn't have much of a reaction at all. Huh? What do you mean gobble me up? Uh-oh. He let go of my face and brushed my hair away. What are you doing? No, don't make puppy eyes at me when you have me locked up. No, no, no. Then he put a hand to my neck, slid the fabric to the side and leaned in. Don't! I tried to pull away, but I was trapped. He grabbed both my shoulders to keep me from falling out of my chair. Changed my keyboard lighting because of that. That's nice. Ooh, that's nice. I like, that's why I like those keyboards so much, when you can customize the lighting of the keys. His breath tickled my neck, making me squirm. Then I flinched as his teeth gently grazed my skin. What are you, a vampire? His warm breath and wet teeth sent goosebumps prickling up my arms. Listen, I know there's a market out there for this type of character. Sadly, I am not at all interested in these kind of characters. So everything he does is just like, I'm just sitting here cringing. It's like, ah, yes, I am locked up, but by my, I don't know, somehow step brother, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, adopted brother, we don't know. And he's weirdly coming on to us. The word stop caught in the back of my throat. Oh my god! Gretel pulled his lips away from my neck and I slowly looked up at him. His smile was incredibly seductive. Is it? Oh, don't do that. Don't put the blame on me, bro. Gretel. My heart thumped in my chest as I exhaled. Then I shook the thoughts from my mind and squeezed my eyes shut. Gretel. The pain of wanting 100% in the game. The pain of having to read both of these routes to get, you know, to the mystery behind it. Behind the mystery behind Alice. We have to get through these. I saw someone say that because there's a bunch of content, especially in Kaguya's route. I will be putting trigger warnings for Kaguya's route. I read up on those. Because, you know, spoilers, whatever, but like, I read up on those because I don't want to accidentally show triggering content. And in this one, he's just weird. Okay, we get it. But like, nothing else. In Kaguya's route, there's a bunch of self-harm, suicide stuff. I don't... Because someone said you could maybe skip these games. Just read up a little on what is happening in them and you can skip them if you are not a fan of these kind of stuff. That's not English. But not a fan of these kind of stories. But on the other hand, it's like, I paid good money for this game. The least I will do is read and find out what the hell is going on. But I will be making fun of these people all the while. Because I cannot take Gretel seriously. Not one bit. Like, it's... Please. Please! Instantly I snapped to my senses and my eyes flew open. Sure enough, my worst fears were confirmed. There stood Gretel doubled over laughing and clutching his sides. Thank you so much for the follow! Hi! Hello very small no, hello very small Xariot. We won the smart ball. That you did. That you did. I heard about it. Were you just messing with me? Current mood? Kill me now. Yeah, that's a mood. Is it fun humiliating me at every single opportunity? He answered without batting a lash. Rage and humiliation welled in my chest and I was practically shaking. I was on the verge of hulking out and shredding these restraints. I'm sorry, the what Ripper? The what? Huh? Yeah. What? That's exactly what my brain looks like as well. What the fuck is a bodice Ripper? For a moment I stared at him slack-jawed, but then I realized what he meant. A certain steamy Harlequin novel. Is it offensive to say a great lesser faces is just a particular interest in... Well, this is an Otome game, so you won't be finding any of that here, but... You know. All at once, I exploded with volcanic rage. You read my book. You can always dream. Well, he's a particular kind of bratty. He'd probably look good in a different kind of genre, yeah. Clearly he could tell I'd been trying to hide it. But as I read in embarrassment, something occurred to me. So everything you said just now was from that book.
解釈しつつ僕なりにアレンジしてみたって感じです。
God, why didn't I realize sooner?
ああいうこと言われるのがお望みなのかなと思って言ってみたんですが、効果は抜群だったようですね。
This is no! Why would you say that? I cannot unsee it now. I can't unsee. Yeah, no, I can't unsee it now. You're right. But why would you make me realize that?
大体よく考えてくださいよ。
Wouldn't it just be cringy? Your entire existence is cringy, my good dude. It's not what you think. I bought it for the cover art. I didn't know it had that kind of content. I don't know what I was implying he was thinking, but I jumped to my own defense nonetheless.
確かもじゃもじゃとした髪型の王子だか伯爵だか執事だかパティシエだかとふわふわした頭の軽そうなお姫様が抱き合ってましたね。しかもうっかり騙されて買ったみたいに言ってますが、その割にはしっかり読み込んであったじゃないですか。
I screamed to down at his voice.
姉さんはああいうのがタイプなんですか？ヒロインの相手役の王子様って毒舌だわ、素直じゃないわ、王子のくせにヒロインを監禁するわで、よくあんな男に惚れるなって感じの最低クソ野郎でしたけど。
Are you hearing yourself right now? Are you hearing yourself right now? As much as I wanted to say, have you looked in the mirror lately, would make it sound like I bought the book because the male lead resembled Gretel and I didn't want to dig my grave any deeper. As I endured the shame, Gretel leaned in to whisper the final blow.
これでお仕置きは終了です。
I'm sick of you! I'm never speaking to you again! This is your punishment for toying with my pure innocent heart. I rose to my feet, dashed to the bed and dove onto it. Then I buried my face into the sheets so I wouldn't have to look at him. After all, he'd just point out how red my face was and make fun of me some more. Oops. The mattress creaked as Gretel sat down onto it.
姉さん、機嫌を直してください。ふざけすぎたことは謝ります。
You know, one thing I do kind of dislike about the game so far is though that Yurika seems to have a completely different personality from the first one. Fufu is way too cute of a word. How is that allowed? You know, Japanese onomatopoeia is so fun. It's like there's so many things where you just combine, like just say the same word twice and then it's a sound or some other thing like fua fua or wait, I don't actually know any other off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of them. And it is so cute, and then the word doesn't even necessarily have to mean something cute, but like fua fua, fua fua. That's so fun. Like I obviously would like it if someone called me an airhead that way, like ha ha ha, you have a fua brain, but like it's such a cute word. He shook me gently by the shoulder, but I ignored him. It's too late for you to try to take the high road now, bucko. Then my talented little adopted... Aha! That's the first time they actually say adopted. Brother switched to a new, more annoying strategy.
姉さん。お姉ちゃん。姉貴。姉ちゃん。お姉様。
I kept ignoring him. After all, I wasn't that easily bored.
姉ちゃん。姉子。
お。
姉じゃ。姉様。姉姫様。
How many words are there?
ゆりか。
Oh. What do you want? I replied in a snippy tone to hide how delighted I was to hear him say my name.
一生口を聞かないんじゃなかったんですか?
I turned away sharply.
冗談です。顔を上げてください。
What's the magic word? He hesitated for a moment then.
君の可愛い顔を見せてほしい。
That's not the magic word. Another cheesy line from the Harlequin novel. Good enough. Oh. I yelled in spite of myself. When our eyes met, he smiled. What the fuck? Okay. Format the turn is part of the game, like a. Sorry about that. No. I can guarantee you that anytime you hear a train, it is from outside my window and not from a game. If ever there is actually a train sound in a game, I will point that out. Because it's going to be hilarious. When our eyes met, he smiled softly. But that smile was fleeting. Noticed what? Well, do you want me to hate you? I don't really understand what your entire point of all this is, you know? Excuse me. Couldn't you have said you're very patient or something instead? But before I could snap back at him, he placed a hand over my eyes. Like what? Gretel. Every time there's trains in a game, Train Simulator. Yeah, Train Simulator next. Gretel and I were not blood related. We were free to date or even get married if we wanted. Emphasis on if we wanted. Aha! Now we get the backstory, so it's not incest. Yeah, we're legally brother and sister after all. Oh, The morning I was walking to college with Wolf, he explained the events of the night prior. He was my confidant, one of the few trusted friends who knew all about the situation with me, Gretel, and Ryoshi. Hence, I often turned to him for advice and offered it up in return. As for Gretel, he left the house ahead of me today. Apparently, he didn't want to risk crossing paths with Ryoshi. To be clear, I get where you're coming from, for siblings were abnormally close. I frowned and tilted my head inquiringly. Wasn't hanging all over each other 24/7 the whole point of dating? I'm glad that Wolfie didn't change personality-wise from Red's Road. He spread his arms wide to offer me a hug. No thanks, but I appreciate the thought. I shrugged him off without missing a beat. But Wolfie didn't take offense. Instead, he returned to the topic at hand. Yeah, there's this palpable distance between them. It's hard to describe, like they hold each other at arm's length. Right from day one. He shook his head in disbelief. Well, I don't know about that. Supposed to be, yeah. But Ryoshi doesn't approve of how much I like Gretel. He laughed and I laughed with him, but we were laughing for two very different reasons. As cute as that sounds, I don't think it's that. If Ryoshi liked me that much, you'd think he'd spoil me rotten. So for some reason our family adopted Gretel into it, but we're not blood related. His actual sister. Yes, Ryoshi and I were real siblings related by blood. I know we don't look alike, we get that a lot. Gretel was the only member of my family who lacked those ties. He was a foreign presence. He doesn't? Oh, he doesn't know he's adopted. No. He's not supposed to, at least. As far as I know, he thinks we're his real family. Sometimes I feel like maybe he's figured it out. I hope he has it figured out. I'm pretty sure he has it figured out. He blinked at me in surprise. To me it seems like he knows the truth, but just pretends not to. He's always so distant with Yoshi and he never really talks about our parents. That said, Mom and Dad are really hands-off with us, which is probably the root issue if you think about it. But also, it's possible some jerk went and told Gretel behind our backs. It's not exactly the world's best kept secret, you know? Exactly. I looked up at the sky and let out another heavy sigh. Honestly, I should try to act more like a big sister. But if I was doing better, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Wolfie's blunt honesty was one of many reasons why I trusted him as much as I did. Do you think Gretel's figured out how I feel? Oh! So we are actually in love with it. I am confused. And if he did put two and two together, he'd be creeped out. Most people, yeah. But Gretel was not most people. So maybe there was a chance he would accept these secret feelings in my heart, but even then it wouldn't work out. As happy as it would make me, it would only make him miserable. It would be all too easy to explain to him that we're not related, but doing so would destroy him. Granted, this is just my personal hypothesis, but I think I'm the only one he actually sees as a family. Yeah, I'm the only one who lives at the house with him and I do the housework. Normally that's something a parent would do, right? So functionally speaking, I'm both his older sister and his mom. Can you see where I'm going with this? No! Yes, exactly. He feels pressure to obey my wishes. He granted me like the trope he was. Oh, I can't even argue with that. For a moment I faltered, but then I quickly recovered. Basically, I'm his ideal older sister. Beautiful, kind, fit, and sexy. Perky, smart, handy in the kitchen. Okay. Okay, Yurika. Go on. I'm just repeating what Gretel said, that's all. Last night, Gretel told me he bases all his standards on me, and I don't think that's healthy. I nodded without hesitation. Yes, my love for him is romantic. I could never say it to his face, but somehow I could say it to a third party just fine. But our love can never be. Oh, dramatic! Remember how we agreed I'm the dictator of his life. From Gretel's perspective, whatever I say goes. And if this power structure exists both inside and outside our home, then I'm essentially his whole world. Or to put it more simply, he's too dependent on me. He sees me as someone who will always be there to protect him. The second I try to tell him that I love him in a romantic way, he loses the only family he has. His guiding principle, his support network, gone. It'll ruin his life. In my opinion, yeah. That said, we're the ones who made him that way, mostly me for coddling him. Ultimately, this was the result of placing him into an environment where one person was overprotective and everyone else was neglectful. I just hope it doesn't come back to bite us one day. Ha! Whatever do you mean? Dude, it's not that simple. Ah, the dude disease is spreading. Dude. Anyway, sorry for ranting. Yeah, your grandma is very nice. Assuming she exists in this room the same as she did in the other. You're the best, Wolfie. Exchange a high five. Not really. Oh. I shook my head and he slumped his shoulders in defeat. Don't worry, I'll be there for you whenever you need me to. If you need my homework, then no. Sure, what's up? I responded without missing a beat. Then he turned to me and said with a perfectly straight face. Oh, okay. Alright, that. I glanced around and noticed a few students, probably the same ones from yesterday, pointing at Wolfie and snickering. All thanks to that slenderous message Gretel had taped to his bag. I fell to my knees, a hand clasped over my chest. I failed you, my lord! What? What? Once we arrived at college, I followed my usual routine. Go to class, eat lunch, and leave as soon as my last lecture was over. Then I went to Gretel's community college and waited outside the front gates for him. But that day... No. A group of male students approached me. How can I help you? I greeted them with a smile, but internally I was on guard. Why, you ask? Because everything about the appearance screamed delinquent, from the messy uniforms to the brightly dyed hair. That depends on who's asking. They sneered at me as they looked me up and down. Yep, that's me. I had a feeling I knew what was coming. Oh. But I could hear the laughter in their voices. Did you ask him that too? You heard me. Answer the question. I continued to smile brightly, but my tone was firm, letting them know I meant business. Evidently they'd expected me to get more flustered than this because they seemed to panic. A third boy joined the conversation. I punch you in the face, that's what! I swung a punch into empty air as a warning. Younger than me or not, I wasn't going to offer them a shred of mercy. Not that violence was the answer, but surely I could get away with an empty threat. At this the boys burst out laughing. For a moment I considered actually punching them, but I held myself back. It didn't matter if they wanted to laugh and poke fun at me, but at this rate Gretel would be impacted too. Hey you!
Huh?
I addressed the boy who had originally called out to me. I figured he was probably the lead of the group. Come here, Zach. I donned a smile and beckoned to him. He looked at me cautiously, so I grabbed him by the hand and pulled him close. Looked deep into my eyes. As he squinted at me dubiously, I cupped his face in both hands, holding his head firmly in place. He struggled to pull himself away, but I stomped down onto his foot to calm him down. Calm him down? You stomp on his foot? Oh, sorry. Violence really wasn't the answer, but there were times when it was necessary, and now was one of those times. I leaned in close. His eyes widened until I could see my reflection in them. There we go. Now look closely, and don't avert your eyes. He would probably feel my breath against his face with every word I spoke. Then I saw him start to blush, and I gloated internally. No matter how tough and cool he thought he was still just a naive little boy on the inside. Now picture Gretel's face. Don't you think we look alike? His hair, for example. He's got the same thick wavy hair as me. See this? This is our natural hair. Wakarimashita ka? Do you understand? He furrowed his brow almost like he didn't understand Japanese or something. Do you see what I'm getting at? So I repeated myself in English. I'm gonna need an answer out of you or you're not going anywhere. He smacked my hands away. Good. Glad we have an understanding. Thank you so much for the high return. I grinned. Behind him, one of his friends shouted at us to get a room and he whirled around to yell at them. I felt bad for humiliating him, but at least now they would hopefully leave Gretel the hell alone. Just then. Teaching some guys a lesson? In a way that you probably should not have seen. A bone-chilling icy voice called out from behind me. Oh, hi Gretel. I turned to find him standing there smiling brightly. Then his gaze drifted from me to the group of guys. His tone was carefully restrained, yet the utter lack of intonation only made him sound more unhinged. With that, the delinquents backed away from me and hurried off. Something about this sudden departure felt strange. I snuck a glance at Gretel beside me. His sigh made me flinch. Are you mad? I could hear it in his voice, and yet at the same time, I was just glad to hear him expressing his emotions at all. Ignoring them won't work, Gretel. They're your classmates, right? Or are they friends of yours? Well, alright then. No! Not really. I think maybe they were trying to hit on me. Yeah, no! This was obviously a lie, tossed out on the spur of the moment. His response was so flat I got the feeling he'd seen right through it. Should I stop waiting for you out here? My heart ached as I thought back to what Wolfie had said. Helicopter mom. He was completely right, of course. And if I kept up my helicoptering, Gretel might start to think I didn't trust him.
今さら気にしたところで遅いですよ。別に僕も気にしないし、姉さんの好きにしたらいいんじゃないですか。
Okay.
ほら、行きましょう。僕たちの家に帰りますよ。
He took my hand and started walking. As I gazed at him, I contemplated my next move. Your next move?
僕はあなたを。
Oh, right. We were at this scene. Right. He pushed me down on the bed and gripped my ankle. Why? What's going on? How many times are you going to climb on top of me? I swear I'm not enjoying this. No, really. I struggled to escape, but he had a firm grip on my leg. Will you fight back? Yes, I will fight back. This is the third yes, apparently. The third yes.
あんまり暴れないでください。パンツ見えてますよ。
You monster!
そうです。どうせ僕は大バカ者ですよ。安心してください。別にあなたを傷物にする気はありませんから。
You better not, or I will actually skip this game and go straight to the third one. Stupid jerk. I hate you. He lifted my leg into the air, took out a green ribbon and tied it around my ankle. What's that?
見てわかりませんか？ただのリボンです。可愛いでしょ？
It's not cute, it's demonic. Granted, appearance-wise, it looked like any ordinary ribbon, and in that sense, it was very pretty indeed. But he was using it for some less than pretty purposes. He held the ends of the ribbon in his hands, almost like a bridge between himself and me. Based on the number of times he was wrapping it around my leg, however, this was one really long ribbon.
姉さんのために買ってきたんです。姉さんに似合う色は何だろうって思いながら。
Isn't green your color, not mine?
姉さんはやっぱり白かなって思ったんですけど、僕白い色って嫌いなんですよ。だから結局僕の好きな色にしてしまいました。
Can't stand the color white. This entire room is white.
たまにはいいでしょ。僕緑って好きなんですよね。落ち着くし。
The entire room's white. I don't really like white. He spoke so quickly I couldn't get a single word in edgewise.
それに材質もこだわったんですよ。これ実はシルクなんです。手触りいいでしょ。結構高かったです。ちなみに姉さんの手を縛っているものとお揃いなんですよ。
あ。
で、見えないか。残念。
What are you going to do with the other half?
どうすると思います？
Truth be told, I knew the answer. I just really wanted to be wrong.
あとはこれをこの鳥かごに結びつける。
That's why it's really long? Oh god. So you're using it as a shackle.
ピンポーン。
Ping pong! His sunny smile was really starting to piss me off.
どうせここからすぐに出られると思ったんでしょ。どっこい。そうは問屋が下ろしません。これでそう簡単には逃げられませんよ。
I have not once attempted to escape. He smirked sadistically at me. In response, I hit him with my best comeback. Funny, I don't remember any BDSM in that Harlequin novel.
似たようなもんですよ。本番があるかないかの違いってだけ。
I can't take it. That's a huge difference. Stop this, I mean it. My tone grew uncharacteristically sharp.
大丈夫です。ほどけやすいようにリボン結びにしますから。
That's not what I'm worried about. And I was shouting. I'm not actually shouting, but just pretend I am shouting. To smile vanished from his
姉
face.
さんは何が不満なんですか？
I have a problem in not knowing why the fuck you're doing what you're doing. Do you have a problem with it? Okay, we need a save here, apparently, and now is the first time we actually get to say no, which is funny. We apparently do not have a problem with it. No, that's not it. I'm angry because you constantly disregard my right to autonomy.
人権ね。
There was a pregnant pause.
姉さんの人権は手足を拘束されたぐらいで揺らぐものなんですか？
Confused, I furrowed my brow. Suppressing the impatience I felt, I willed myself to stay calm. Listen, Gretel, we're going to be living here together, right?
ええ、そうですよ。
And yet you expect me to stay tied up the whole time, no free will of my own? Don't you think maybe it's a little inhumane to take the power of choice away from me?
そうかもしれませんね。でも、自由になりたいのなら、それこそ姉さんの心がけ次第じゃないでしょうか。
What do you mean?
今日も姉さんは僕の言いつけを破って、よく知りもしない人間を家にあげましたよね。
Well, yeah, but my words faltered. He was right. I mean, who is that guy anyway? You know him, right?
さあ、ぶっちゃけ僕もわかりません。
Wait, what? I blinked.
あの人が何者なのか、何を考えているのかもわかりません。ただ、あの人は利用できるから利用している。
Okay. I felt silent. He was so desperate to imprison me, he accepted assistance from someone he couldn't be sure he could trust.
賢い姉さんのことですから、ここがどこだか、なんとなく気づき始めているんじゃ
Well,
ない
in
ですか。
some kind of forest. I paused to think about it. A summer home somewhere? He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled knowingly. But I wanted to get some kind of response out of him, so I decided to tell him everything I'd worked out. It's been 2 days since I first got here, or maybe longer since I don't know what day of the week it is. You claim you've been going to school, but to me it feels like you come home way too quickly. You probably haven't been going to school at all, have you? What have you been doing out there, Gretel?
姉さんは本当に頭がいいな。感心しますよ。
He stared out into space for a moment. His expression seemed almost sad. Now I was starting to worry. Come on, Gretel, talk to me. I can tell you're doing all this for a reason, and it's important to you, but is this really the only way?
あるからしているんじゃないですか。
Okay, but surely you realize this can't last forever. His gaze faltered for a moment, then returned to me. You know that, right? If the rest of the family finds out we ran away from home and stopped going to school, they're going to come looking for us.
探しに来ませんよ。
Oh? He shot back
あの
coldly.
人たちは僕たちを捨てたんです。
Okay? Abandoned us.
そうです。
I paused to think. Was it possible? Could they have actually abandoned us? Do you believe him? No, we don't believe. Oh god, Jesus, all these choices. Nope. No. There was just no way it could be true. Not that my family would never abandon us, but rather I got the sense that Gretel was keeping me in the dark about a lot of things.
姉さんが信じようが信じまいが、どうだっていいです。僕は誰かの命令じゃなく、
That's
僕の死体を。
great! You can do what you want, but keep me out of it. Or actually tell me what that is that you're doing. He rose to his feet and tied the ribbon to the birdcage in the center of the room.
ラッピングされた姉さんも素敵です
Keep
よ。
your cringy talk to yourself, please. Gonna scream. The room was quiet, save for the faint rustle of flipping pages. I was lying in the bed, Gretel was sitting on a chair in the center of the room reading a book. I was too far away to get a clear look at the front cover, but I could tell it was some kind of math textbook. Ew! Given the circumstances, it was almost laudable of him to keep up on his schoolwork. Either that, or he was completely insane. Honestly, the more I tried to see things from his perspective, the less I understood. He seemed like a sinner and a saint all wrapped up into one. He teased me, provoked me, and tied me up, yet he never went further than that. Even his most condescending commands were never enforced, his worst offenses never crossed the line. Granted, this was all just my personal opinion, other people would probably feel differently, and obviously it didn't make his actions permissible. But if he was going to hurt me, he would have done it by now. Take these wrist restraints, for example. If push came to shove, I could untie them myself or even burn them off. I could escape if I needed to, and there was no way a guy as smart as Gretel had somehow failed to realize that. Want me to help you with your schoolwork? I called out to him in a cheerful voice, hoping to clear away the awkward tension from
いえ
earlier.
結構です。
Come on, don't be shy.
いえ、別に遠慮なんてしてません。
He answered flatly without sparing me a single glance. I pouted my lips, then finally he looked up from his book.
暇なんですか？
Just a little. Yeah,
寝てればいいじゃないですか。
I'm not tired.
へえ。
His gaze returned to the book. There's nothing to do here. I'm bored. I flailed my legs in protest, but Gretel just ignored me, so I gave up. I couldn't even entertain myself by throwing a tantrum. If you were at home, I could be cooking or cleaning or doing laundry right about now, I muttered sulkily. The main room was fairly large, but here in total silence, any small sound would echo. Doing chores is never a waste of time. Come on, let's play a game or something. At last, Gretel closed his textbook. Sure. I can't play cards without my hands. Oh, right. Nectarine. Gohan. Well, the game is over then, because it ends in an N. In Japanese. In Japanese, if you play shiritori, if the words ends with an N, it's over. You lost. Because you cannot start a word with just an N in Japanese. Should have known Gretel wouldn't make this easy on me. Oh no? Xylophone. Sweet tongue. Well, I don't know what the Japanese words are for the stuff she's saying, so... Xenophobia. Xian. Xenograph. Xantic. Xenotransplantation. I memorized a whole bunch a long time ago, specifically in case this ever happened. I smirked smugly. So you're giving up, because that means I win. I don't... Do I know any words that start with X aside from xylophone? I know a name that starts with X, but that's it. This wiped the smug right off my face. I flopped down onto the bed, and turned away from him. Yes, please. I shot back up again. Even I was impressed with how quickly I was able to change my tune. Are you saying I need to lose weight? I scowled. What is wrong with you? Desperately I bit back the urge to scream. Seeing as he's someone knew my panty size, it really came as no surprise to think that he probably knew my cup size as well. Just to be clear, you aren't going around making these inappropriate comments to anyone else, are you? Oh you could be a gentleman with me too, you know. That said, this game is a bit of a relief. I was happy to know that he limited his rude, unreasonable behavior to me only. In a way, it made me special. And I like the idea of having a special connection with him, even if it wasn't romantic. Oh, I wonder what the change of clothes is tonight. Right, what costume is he going to put me in this time? How do we respond to his request? We invite him to join us. Why? Okay. I decided to get my revenge by teasing him back. Hey, Gretel. Wanna join me? Unfortunately, I was so nervous I tripped over my own tongue. Reasonable. That's what you're worried about? He shrugged me off casually. Defeated, I stared into space. I was kind of hoping he'd get a little more flustered than that. Pouting my lips, I glared at him. He smiled stiffly. Why? Okay then, why don't you take one first? I hastily changed tack. Gretel rose from his chair. I thought he was headed to the bathroom, but instead he walked up to me and patted me on the head. What?
で、僕がシャワーを浴びてる隙に何するつもりなんですか?
Playing the waiting game. Wow, it's like you don't even trust me.
いたずらしません?
Of course, I'm not you, you know. I laughed.
そうですか。お先
mm.
に失礼します。
And with that, he disappeared into the bathroom. Oh, Jesus Christ, that was a loud door. Phew. Now then, once I confirmed that the door was shut, I got up from the bed. Now that Gretel's in the shower, you decide to get revenge. Oh, wait, I forgot to write these down. Join. Revenge. Hehe, time to get my revenge for all the humiliation he's put me through. I totally sounded like a villain from a shonen manga, but I didn't care.
そうだ。
And so the villain's plan was foiled in one fell swoop. Why? Because Gretel had walked out of the bathroom in his underwear. As if someone had shown a flashlight in my face, I immediately realized I couldn't put my hands over my eyes, so instead I squeezed them shut.
はしたない。ギャーなんて仮にも女性なんですから、もうちょっと可愛く叫んでくださいよ。
I could hear the annoyance in his voice. Oh yeah? Well, what's the matter with you? Either put a shirt on or shut the door.
はい、閉めました。
Nice try, Gretel. I meant go back inside.
うん。姉さんも学習してきましたね。
Yeah, I was about to say, he shut the door, but he's still outside of it. So I knew it. You were trying to trick me.
今さらかまと飛ぶって。僕の下着だって平気な顔して洗濯してたじゃない
The
ですか。
amount of times I've had to read underwear in this rude, I swear to God. Your underwear is not the same thing as your naked
い
body.
や、別に真っ裸じゃなくて下着姿ですし。
Congratulations.
第一、姉さんが持っていた少女小説でも半裸の男とヒロインがくんずほぐれつって感じでしたけど。
No, I'm not listening. Unable to bear it, I dropped to my knees. All that screaming left me out of breath. Then after a moment I heard the bathroom door open and shut. I raised my head and slowly, timidly opened my eyes. Evidently Gretel had actually gone back into the bathroom this time. I could hear the water running. You think that would be enough to fool me, but the joke's on you! I whirled around to find no one there. Wait, what? Now then, where was I? Gretel's taking a bath, so what's my next move? If this were a perfect world, I'd have some cringy costume ready for him to wear, but unfortunately my life wasn't that convenient at present. So I decided to look through the cabin for any alternatives. Where will you investigate? We will investigate absolutely everywhere, apparently. Birdcage. I still can't get used to how creepy this thing is. I walked around the full circumference of the birdcage. It appeared to be an ordinary metal cage with no modifications, but it contrasted sharply with the rest of the decor, and my curiosity was drawn to it like a magnet. Oh, it opened! As I fumbled at the door handle with my bowed hands, I felt the lock click open. And so I walked into the cage without a second thought. Being inside, it felt much more cramped and oppressive than its external appearance would suggest. But I guess cages aren't really supposed to be comfortable. Okay. Kitchen. I wandered into the kitchen. Then I checked the cupboards and fridge, but couldn't find anything especially interesting. How is she opening the cupboards? Her hands are bound behind her back. Unless she can, like, you know, somehow get... wait, let me try this. How would you do that with bound hands? How? How are you supposed to open a cupboard that's somewhere above your head with bound hands? When they're bound behind your back, I mean. Also, thank you for the high time in the posture check. We only had paper plates and plastic silverware. Anything that could be used as a weapon, like the kitchen knives, were stored out of my reach. Oh, I see. I'm guessing she's just checking the ones that are down there. Evidently he was looking out for my safety. Or maybe his own. It was hard to say. The bed. I peered under the bed. It was too dark to see much of anything. I squinted as best as I could, but as far as I could see, the floor was perfectly spotless. Oh, and the closet. I opened the closet to find my freshly cleaned clothes hanging up to dry. I didn't realize he hung them up for me. I turned around so I could feel whether they were all dry. Nice and dry. Good. She's a witch, I tell you. Maybe maybe she's actually... You know how it's all about Alice, but maybe she's actually the evil witch of some kind of story. Who knows? I'd like to believe that she's actually good, but I wouldn't even be, I wouldn't be surprised if it was either. For one, this is an Otome game, so I don't really think she's going to be the one who is the mean one, I guess. Or the bad one, because they don't really do that to Otome game protagonists, but if they did, props to them. That would be interesting. But I don't think that's going to happen. She's like the savior for all of these guys. Because, love conquers all or something. It was still early winter, but with the wood-burning stove running 24/7, the interior of the cabin was a toasty warm. That must have helped. Additionally, I could see some clothes I didn't recognize. There were a few shopping bags sitting on the floor of the closet. I reached in and found several more pairs of women's underwear. Oh. I knew he was only trying to be considerate, but I couldn't help but feel a little weirded out. Upon further inspection, I realized these all still had the tags attached. He really went out and bought me brand new underwear, huh? Granted, he might have ordered them online for all I knew, but I didn't understand why he couldn't simply grab some from my room instead. Was there a reason he felt the need to purchase new ones? Why risk the embarrassment of buying women's underwear? Lastly, I stood in front of the wood-burning stove. The smell of ash met my nostrils, and when I bent down, I could see embers still glowing faintly through the tiny glass window. So much for that, I guess. Gretel had extinguished the fire himself. Supposedly, he did it to keep me safe, but though the fire was out, there was still enough residual heat to keep me warm. I had now examined the entire cabin. Sadly, I had failed to discover anything especially interesting. Then again, I guess I already did most of the investigating yesterday. Well, now what? There was nothing left for me to do. I guess I don't have a choice. Oh well. The only option available to me was to make him laugh at my own expense. You guessed it, making funny faces. So I donned the weirdest face I could come up with and waited patiently for Gretel to come out of the bathroom. Why are you wearing a butler suit? Then I burst out laughing. Yes, me, not him. Why are you wearing that? He had walked out wearing a waiter uniform of all things. I struggled to contain myself. Oh, totally, of course you do. I nodded vigorously. I'm sorry, I just wasn't expecting you to walk out wearing that. Oh, right, I guess we're also wearing the cafe clothes right now. Oh, you're right, we're like a cosplay couple. I made myself laugh again. Looking back, I'm not sure why I found it so hilarious. I guess it just struck my funny bone in such a way that caused a giggle fit. Gretel walked over and untied my hands and feet. I could smell a faint whiff of something nice. You smell sweet. Is there an Otome game with a villainess? A game? I'm not sure. I mean, there probably is in Japanese, but none in English yet. But some light novels have come out. Or like, that thing with I was reincarnated as a villainess in an Otome game, blah blah blah. There's several. It's like a new thing that spawned. Sometime last year, I guess. Where it's an isekai, but like with a girl who gets reincarnated into a Otome game world, but she's not the protagonist, but she is a villainess, and she's trying to, not die, because in the original novel the villainess would die. Stuff like that. There's been several of them out so far. But for a real game, I haven't seen one yet. I haven't seen any yet. I'd have to look up though. Maybe there are some out and I just didn't realize. But it's like they don't really do the anti-hero stuff. Because I don't know. I guess it's just not popular enough. I leaned in closer to his hair. I couldn't tell if it was vanilla or honey or what. I do? Then I remembered there was only one kind of soap in the bathroom. Too bad I can't really smell my own scent. I sniffed my newly freed whiz. Gretel gave me a little push toward the bathroom. He walked to the closet and pulled out a towel along with a change of clothes, underwear included. Are these the kind of panties you're into, Gretel? Oh! Embarrassed, I stared at the floor and regretted ever asking. Hello! Good evening! How are you? Hit me with your specialty. What's his specialty? After my shower, I changed to my new clothes and sat down to eat with Gretel. He had prepared cupcakes adorned with whipped cream and candied rose and violet petals. Oh! But these cupcakes weren't just pretty, they tasted amazing too. Gretel had filled each of them with some sort of violet gem. Plus, the tea he served me came with violet petals and mint leaves floating on the surface. All in all, it was very classy. Phenomenal. I'm sad. I'm sad that we don't also get CGs of the food because there's for some reason, as it is usually is with the games I play, for some reason food plays a big part, but we don't actually get to see it. Imagine Otome Isekai with the demon lady. Oh. Yeah. Sounds good. I love me some demons. When we arrived home, I caught a whiff of something unpleasant. It reeks of cigarette smoke. I glanced over to find Gretel with a visible grimace on his face. Oh, this is a flashback still. Oh, okay. I watched him go out and turn and headed for the kitchen. Yoshi. I flung open the door and sure enough there sat my older brother Yoshi smoking a cigarette. Why are you smoking in the kitchen? Of all the places in a house, why would you smoke in a kitchen? We're home. He shifted his disinterested gaze away from me and exhaled a cloud of smoke. No smoking in the house, I'm confiscating that. I snatched the cigarette away and put it out in the sink. Just have some candy or something instead. With his chin resting on his hand, he grabbed a nearby jar of star candies and held it out to me. And those Gretels. Pink, green, a rainbow of colors sparkled up at me through the glass. But before I could accept... Gretel walked in as if on cue. Gretel snatched the jar away and bolted from the room. Wait, Gretel. Yoshi! I snapped at him. It's just candy. Supervised. The word felt a little too harsh to use against a family member. You could stand to treat him with a little more kindness. But we're family. Bro! Hey! Yoshi had seen through my act a long time ago. Why? What does he know that we don't? Okay, but it's not just our fault that he's being raised unhealthy if the rest of the family just doesn't exist. Like, at least I care for him.
あいつをあまり甘やかすな。でないとあいつの中にある攻撃性がいつかお前に向かう日が来るぞ。
What the fuck? I had a feeling you'd be here. I found Gretel sitting on a bench by the lake shore.
姉さん
Can I sit with you?
どうぞ。
He moved the jar of candy beside him to make room for me to sit. Thanks. I plopped down next to him and turned in his direction. You ate all that? I pointed at the jar in his hands.
これを食べると落ち着くんです。イライラとか不安とか
Well,
そう
maybe
い
it's
うの
not
全
just
部どうでもよくなるっていう。
candy. His voice was lethargic. You heard Yoshi, didn't you? It's not healthy to eat too many.
そうですね。
Plus, if you fill up on sweets, you won't want to eat dinner.
基本的に別腹ですから。
Right. But before I could continue, Gretel cut in.
そんなことよりここがよくわかりましたね。
Imagine you're sitting by a lake and a train just shows up. They... I know everything about you, Gretel.
プライバシーの侵害だ。
It's what? Oh, that was one long train. Okay. But we're family.
家族でもです。
I felt silent. Then Gretel let out a long sigh and shook his head.
まあ姉さんだけは特別です。許してあげます。
I wonder if we ever will find out what happened to him before he was adopted by us. I'm special. Yay! Thank you, great and merciful Gretel. Through the lake splashing water on you. Yeah, just... You know how in Spirited Away, that one train that's running on the... Well, it's not directly running on the water. Obviously, there's rails. But rails in the water. That's what happens here. They're having some kind of deep talk and then... and ICE just going. I pressed my hands together in reverence.
こういうところがな。
Gretel let out another exasperated sigh. So, what? I waited for him to continue. He looked at me for a moment and then... He pinched my nose.
こういうところがすごく憎たらしいです。
Nah, that hurts my feelings. What did I do wrong? With my nose pinched between his fingers, my voice came out all nasally. Okay, excuse me. What did I do wrong? Just then Gretel raised his eyebrows and smiled.
そうだ。姉さん、横になりませんか？
Huh? One Piece's rails floating. True! I like that one. I like the entire arc. Was good. Here, on the bench?
膝枕してあげます。
I can? What? There's another one! But this one is very slow. For that one probably had to wait until the other one had passed. I wasn't expecting this proposal and I froze. Then after a long silence, what's gotten into you, dude? For some reason I tagged on dude like I was Wolfie.
別にどうしたもこうしたもないっすよ。なんとなくしてほしそうな感じがしたので言ってみたまです。
So off a dude! Oh. I felt like such an idiot. I should have made some kind of joke about both so sounding like Wolfie, but it didn't even occur to... What?
Mein Soundtrack von Amazon Music.
Alexa! Stop! Why the fuck? Hello? Why? I didn't say anything close to resembling Alexa. I'm not talking to you. What the fuck?
不満ですか？ああ、特に必要はない。
No, Yurika definitely wants to use you as a lap pillow. No, I'm definitely interested, please. I begged them desperately.
そうですか。なら。
Lap pillows are nice. Duolingo takes a break. Yeah, I can't catch a break. It's either one or the other. Gretel handed me his jaw, then indicated his lap, and I have it at gesture. I sat down on his thighs.
早く
Oh, okay. Hesitantly, I let him guide my head down into his lap.
どうですか僕の膝心地は
Well, it's not very soft.
そりゃプニプニしてたら嫌ですよ僕はぽっちゃりでも女の子でもないんですから
Man, I haven't had the chance to lie in someone's lap in a long time. I'm always the person people nap on. And they go, oh, your thighs are so soft. And you're just like, I'm glad it's comfortable, but it kind of hurts when people say, oh, your thighs are soft. Right. Honestly, this was my first time putting my head in anyone's lap, so I wasn't sure how it was supposed to feel. Plus, I couldn't really relax with him staring down at me like that. To be honest, I don't know if this is comfortable or not. I can't really, focus. My heart was thumping uncontrollably in my chest.
男にこんなことされたのは
Maybe. I answered evasively. Why was his tone so flat? I didn't
と
know.
いうかもうちょっとリラックスしたらどうですか頭浮かせてたら膝枕じゃないですし
He pressed my head firmly against his thigh. Ow! I think my neck just cracked.
ああすみません
It's okay. Truth be told, it kind of hurt, but not that badly. Am I heavy?
重くないですよ
What if your leg starts to go numb?
その時は容赦なく振り落としますから
He smirked at me. I buried my face in my hands and pretended to sob. You monster!
そうですよ
Laughing, he grabbed my
手
hand.
が冷たい僕が温めてあげますよ
Without hesitation, he entwined his fingers with mine. This was no ordinary platonic hand-holding. A doofy smile spread on my face. I caught myself a moment later, of course, but by then Gretel was already snickering at me.
旗から見たら僕たちが兄弟だなんて思わないでしょうね
I really wonder if he knows or if he doesn't. Yeah, I guess siblings don't really do this stuff, huh?
ええそうですね
Yeah, not normally. Both of us were fixated on the concept of normal, probably because we knew full well we were anything but.
夜になっちゃいましたね
Yeah, the days are short in the wintertime. I'd almost forgotten what season it was. The winters were always harsh here. Thankfully, it was still early into the season, but it was already fairly nippy outside, yet I scarcely felt it. Was it the warmth from Gretel's
この
hand?
まま帰れなかったらどうします
Go back where? Home?
そうです
You don't want to?
質問しているのは僕ですよ
Oh, right. I guess it depends on you.
は
If you wanted to go home, then I'd go with you, and if not, then I wouldn't.
一連卓章ってやつですか
Till death do us part. Wanna just run away from home together?
うわ悪い誘いだ
Hey.
僕を甘い罠にかけてどうしたいんですか
Who knows? Maybe I'll lure you in and gobble you up.
悪い魔女だ
Yeah, I know. I giggled. After a while, I noticed Gretel blinking his eyes sleepily. Are you tired, Gretel?
そうですね少し
Wanna trade off?
いえこのままで構いません
He squeezed my hand and closed his eyes. You can take a little nap if you want. I'll wake you in a bit.
僕が眠っている間に置き去りにしないでください
Wouldn't it be better if they go home and go to actually go to sleep? Don't worry. No matter what happens, I won't let go. Reassuringly, I squeezed his hand
何
back.
があっても本当に
Yeah,
僕がどんなことをしても
no matter what.
僕の代わりに姉さんが死んでも
That's kind of hard to answer, but I guess. Sure, I'll die for you. I nodded without missing a beat. Gretel stared at me, eyes wide. Then he furrowed his brow. What?
正直ドン引きです
You're the one who asked! Wow, rude. The rejection
さ
stung.
らっとそんな重いこと言われても困ります
You're the one who asked! I pounded and Gretel averted his gaze.
なんで僕のためにそこまでしてくれるんです
because I love you. And I'd do anything for someone I love.
それは他の家族にも言えますか？
No, probably not. Just you, Gretel.
僕だけが特別ってわけですか？
Yep, you're the special exception.
そうですか。
He closed his eyes.
漁師さんはまだ僕を疑ってるんですよね。僕が誰かを傷つけるんじゃないか。
My heart skipped a beat, and not in a fun, romantic way. Instead, what I felt was...
姉さんも不安ですか？
I feel like we're missing something backstory-wise. Like, why is everyone so afraid that he's going to hurt someone?
姉さんが毎日毎日僕と一緒にいるのもあの人に言われて僕を監視しているんでしょう。
No, I'm not. I'm just worried about you, Gretel.
同じことですよ。心配しているということは不安だってことでしょう。
My chest
姉
ached.
さんは僕のことを特別って言うけど、それはどんな意味で特別なんですか？
Gretel, With his eyes closed and his voice perfectly level, I couldn't read his emotions whatsoever. What honeyed words could I whisper to say them? I fell into thought. I love you. You're special to me. In the end, I settled on words of affirmation.
そうですね。僕もこうして姉さんから
Like,
特別扱いされ
when did we adopt him? When did the family adopt him? Like, he had to be fairly young, otherwise they wouldn't have said, does he even know about it? Because if they adopted him when he was, I don't know, 10, 12, then obviously... So what are they so scared of? That he may have done when he was very small, that he could hurt someone now that he's older? I don't get it. He bent down and planted a kiss on my forehead. Whoa! Ho! We're quick. Let's back up to about 6 months ago. At that time, Gretel was still a goody-goody honor student. He got near perfect marks on all his tests, and he excelled at everything he tried. He was always calm, composed, and confident. According to his teachers, he had an affable personality and knew how to win points with people. For better or for worse, his charm was magnetic. Mom, Dad, and I all cared about him very, very much. Gretel, Dad's on the phone. He's asking for you. Here.
ありがとうございます。もしもし、グレーテルです。はい。はい。僕は元気ですよ。
6
今、
months
姉さん
ago.
と一緒に夕飯を作っていました。ええ。僕は大丈夫
So
ですよ。
something happened during those 6 months.
父さんこそ仕事が忙しいんでしょ？僕は大丈夫です。何も問題はありません。はい。はい。
はい。はい。
それじゃあ。
What did he say?
僕に何か不自由はないかって聞かれたので、問題ないと答えておきました。
Sounds like the usual.
ええ。これだけ心配されると信用されてないのかと逆に不安になります。
He just cares about you, Gretel.
そうですね。
Our parents are extremely busy people, but they always made time for phone calls or visits to see how Gretel was doing. Excuse me. Plus, they would buy him whatever he needed to live comfortably. In my eyes, they were doing everything they possibly could for him. And as for me...
そうだ。姉さん、勉強教えてくれませんか？
Sure. I was willing to do anything if it would help him. I wanted him to have a happy life, so I always made sure to treat him with love and kindness. Was I coddling him? Probably. But he never once questioned it, and as far as I was concerned, it was having a positive effect on his life. So then you take that and do this.
すごい。学校の先生よりわかりやすい。
Hehe, I'm honored to be of service. Anything else you need help with?
いえ、今のところは大丈夫です。
You sure?
ああ、僕も姉さんと同じ学校に通えたらいいな。
I know it sucks being a year behind me, but that's just how the school system works.
そうですけど、飛び級とかできないのかな。
Sounds complicated, but I think you might be able to make it happen if you went to college abroad.
海外か。
Well, that would kind of defeat his point. You must really hate community college, huh?
別に嫌いなわけじゃないです。ただ、周りはバカばかりで、とてもつまらない。
Everyone's an idiot.
レベルが低いっていうか。
Oh. Admittedly, Gretel had a bit of a superiority complex, but it didn't really bother me. Gotcha. Well, if you make it into my university, we can go to the same school together. Then we can spend even more time with each other.
そうですね。
Just let me know if there's anything I can do for you, okay?
はい。頼りにしてますよ、姉さん。
Our family was a little abnormal, sure, but in my opinion, we were doing just fine. I was sure it would last forever, until the day it all came crashing down. Ooh. On that fateful day, an incident occurred at Gretel's community college. The victim was a student at Gretel's school, and the perpetrator was Gretel. After school, the two of them got into a scuffle and the other boy was injured so badly he needed stitches. Then a meeting was called to discuss Gretel's punishment. The result, suspended for 2 weeks. Our parents decided to have Gretel temporarily isolated in order to undergo a psychological evaluation. Jesus. Gretel. Oh. Okay. Yoshi confined Gretel to a separate, smaller house elsewhere. Why? Yoshi, why would you lock him up? I was completely against it. I didn't see the need for any solitary confinement. I was sure Gretel could recover just fine at home. Is it? Isolating someone just because he got into a fight at school? What? Please let me see him. No matter how I pleaded, Ryoshi refused to listen. I wanted to get a look at Gretel's living arrangement for myself, but Ryoshi refused to let me inside. There was nothing I could do. Gretel had asked me to help him, yet I couldn't. Ooh, the room is flipped. When I finally saw Gretel again 1 week later, he was completely emaciated. For the first few days of isolation, he had refused to eat or drink anything. Gretel, is there anything you need? Anything I can do for you? Gretel, don't cry, okay? I'm here for you. I wanted to console him, to put a smile back on his face. I'll protect you, I promise. After that, Gretel was released from his confinement, and I hovered over him more than ever before. Once his 2-week suspension came to an end, I walked him to and from school each day and reduced his responsibilities as much as possible. Fortunately, he returned home in high spirits, and we went back to life as usual, on the surface anyway. But his relationship with Yoshi had soured even further, to the point that simply being in the same room was enough to ruin Gretel's mood. Why would you put your child into solitary confinement just because he had a fight at school? What the fuck? Also, who has an entire house just standing around where you could put someone in? What the fuck? One other thing had changed too. He had stopped asking me for help with anything. At last I understood. This wasn't just any cabin, it was Gretel's isolation cell. I should have realized it sooner. Why didn't I realize it sooner? Through my hazy vision I could see Gretel standing there holding a bright white plate. I had this dream. You were there, and I... Gretel pressed his index finger to my lips. At his prompting I felt silent. Ooh. Oh. We're a bit... Wait. The room looks different. Where did the window go? Once he confirmed that I was done talking, he sat down onto the bed and started cutting up a pancake on his plate. Then he stepped a fork full of it and held it up to my mouth. Eat the pancake. Yes, it's a yes again. Sleepily I opened my mouth and took the bite.
いい子ですね。
Is it zoomed in? No, but like right behind his head, right? Like a little to the right of the bed. That's where the window was, or not? I feel like that was where the window is supposed to be, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. I don't know. Because it's definitely zoomed in on the cage and the bed, but for some reason I thought the window was also on that side. He stroked my hair. Then he gently fed me another bite. And another, and another. Almost like he was nursing a battered baby bird back to health. A battered baby bird back... Wow, that's a lot of B. After I finished my food, Gretel cleared away the dirty dishes. I sat up and looked out the window, or tried to, but the curtains were drawn. What? Hey, Gretel.
何ですか、姉さん。
Why did you kiss me that one time?
あの時って
You know, when I was resting my head in your lap?
ああ、あの時のことですか。あれは
He fell silent for a moment and pulled me into a hug.
暴れないんですね。
Why would I? I'm not opposed to it. Despite the circumstances, I was still receiving a hug from my crush. Then he drew his lips to my ear and whispered,
僕に抱きしめられて嬉しいですか？
yes. Again, yes. I have to write this down.
変態。
Hey! I accidentally sprayed spit onto Gretel's face.
汚いな。
Me? Pervert. I was so flustered I couldn't even form a coherent sentence.
弟の僕に抱きしめられて嬉しいって。しかもこんな状況でよく言えるなぁと。
Don't be
姉さんのその
fucking
シンプルな
rude.
安心しました。
You started it. My voice escalated to a scream. I wanted to push him away, but he refused to budge. So instead I flayed my legs, but he just pinned them down with his own.
そうでした。僕が姉さんを閉じ込めてるんでした。
Yeah. How did you nearly forget?
つまり僕はド変態ってことですね。
Okay. He let out an affable chuckle, but this was no laughing
け
matter.
ど
Suddenly he lowered his voice.
兄弟でも何でもない他人が抱きしめ合ってるのってどうなんでしょうね。
Ah, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Yeah, there we are. I froze, eyes wide. I couldn't speak. My lips trembled, but no words came. It felt like his icy gaze had turned me to stone. A long moment passed as we gazed into each other's eyes. Then, at last, I found my voice. You knew?
そりゃもちろん。
His tone was casual.
ついでに姉さんが僕のことを好きだってことも知ってます。
Wow, okay.
もちろん恋愛的な意味で。
That's a big bomb to drop right after waking me up, you know? I turned it over under the blanket, pulling it up over my head. But Gretel yanked it right back off me.
こっちを向いてください。
So you're going to keep calling me sister even though you just said it to me as well? That we're not blood related and you are aware of that? I curled into a ball and shook my head. I'm sorry.
なんで謝るんですか？
Come to think of it, maybe it was silly to apologize. If anything, he should apologize to me. But my apology was a gut
僕の
reaction.
顔見てください。
I can't, I answered in a tiny voice.
僕に可愛い姉さんの顔を見せてください。
He spoke softly like he was consoling a
僕
child.
を見て。
This time he spoke sharply, commanding me, but I still refused. Leave me alone. He grabbed my shoulders and turned me in his direction. Then he cupped my chin and tilted my face up.
なんでキスしたかって？そりゃ
That's a very pretty CG though.
姉さんを特別扱いしたからですよ。
Let me just... There we go.
あなたを甘やかしたかったんですよ。僕のことを好きならキスされたら嬉しいだろうなってサービスです。
Service, uh-huh.
特別扱いの特別は恋愛感情だった。 姉さんは隠し方が下手なんですよ。それともあのあからさまな態度の数々はわざと
He looks older in this CG than he does normally, I feel.
常々そういうところがムカつくなって思ってたんです。姉さんのこと基本的には尊敬してますし、
Thank you, Train, for destroying the atmosphere.
僕が今つっても大体のことを察してくれるくせに、なんでそういうところだけ手しきれないんだろう。
It just keeps going. Oh my god.
僕だって何度も何度も姉さんを愛そうと思いましたよ。いや、違う。愛してはいるんです。僕は姉さんを愛してる。しようと思えばキスもできるし、セックスだってできる。
I let out a small shriek as he cupped my. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Pressed over my clothes.
僕は姉さんが好きです。
You are.
姉さんを愛しています。別に恋人になったって何もおかしくはない。誰も非難しない。誰も咎めない。
Hmm.
だって僕たちは血がつながっていないんですから。でもダメなんだ。ダメなんですよ。姉さんだってわかるでしょ。
I felt a drop of liquid hit my cheek, and when I opened my eyes, I found Gretel above me crying.
姉さん、
Aww.
僕は姉さんだけには捨てられたくない。
Okay, but why does he think we would abandon him? I feel like what? I'm missing something. Weird situation where let me make a yeah. Listen. I always take screenshots of CGs in games. I have to do it. No matter what the text says, I need to take a screenshot of it. I let out my 24th sigh of the day.
どうしたんすか？ため息ばっかついて。らしくねえっすよ。いつものおちゃらけたアリスちゃんはどこ行ったんすか？
Wolfie shook my shoulders, derailing my train of thought.
あれ？てか珍しい。すぐに帰らねえんすか？グレーテルの野郎を迎えに行くんじゃねえんすか？
I decided I'm not going to do that anymore.
へえ。
His eyes widened as he murmured in surprise. I paused my contemplation and decided to have Wolfie answer a question on behalf of the entire male gender. Do guys kiss girls they aren't interested in?
できる。
Wow! He grinned from ear to ear. Okay then. I didn't feel like making any catty quips, so I let it go. He didn't represent all men, just the horny wolves. Thus it was a mistake to ask him in the first place. After Wolfie and I went our separate ways, I thought long and hard about last night. Why did Gretel do that? Last night while I was resting my head in his lap, he leaned down and kissed me. But what did it mean? Then again, he just gave me a little peck on my eyelids at most. Any family member would do that. The thought made my heart ache, and I abruptly stopped and crouched down into a ball right where I was. Do family members kiss each other's foreheads? Maybe in other countries. No, surely there's no way this could be taken as a platonic kiss anywhere in the world, even between family. Personally, I couldn't see myself kissing anyone except someone I was in love with. Okay, but like, a mom giving the child a kiss on the forehead is very much a normal thing to do. I can't speak for siblings, seeing as I have no siblings. But just as I hit sigh number 25... It was the gang of delinquent boys from yesterday. The way they sneered at me set me on edge. Can I help you? I rose to my feet and looked around. School was out for the day and there were plenty of students around. confident that they wouldn't try to pull anything, I donned a smile.
あんたの弟のことで話があるんだけど、一緒に来てくれない？
Sorry, but I'm busy. As I tried to walk past them, however, one of them grabbed me by the
ちょ
arm.
っとこっちに来てよ。
Oh, I don't like this. It was the leader guy I had messed with. Stop. I scowled at him in disgust. Keep this up and I'll make a scene.
出せば。その代わり、あ
I'd
いつ
say
が
it
どう
depends
な
on
っ
the
ても
siblings,
知ら
but
ねえ
don't
け
really
ど
know. He who?
あんたの弟だよ。は、弟でもなんでもなかったっけ？
What did you do to him? I yanked my arm out of his
別
grasp.
に何も。なあ。
They all exchanged a glance. What did you do? I repeated myself more firmly this time as I stared directly into their eyes.
もういろいろと分かってるだろうけどさ、俺たちあんたの弟にムカついてんだよね。だからちょっとばかり痛い目見てもらおうと思って呼び出したんだ。で、ちょっとボコったら泣いて謝ってあんたの名前呼んでんの。今俺らの仲間があんたの弟を可愛がってるよ。ほら、これが証拠。
On the small rectangular phone screen, I could see a guy who looked like Gretel getting kicked in. Wait, they have. Listen, I'm sorry. Sorry about the entire situation. That Gretel is actually getting beat up right now, but they have phones. Why didn't any of them use phones in the first game? If the phones exist? The mobile phones, I mean? It was dark and I couldn't get a good look at his face, but he appeared to be tied to a tree. Each time they kicked him, he let out a painful groan and shouted, "Sister." So he's in a forest. The closest forest is by the lake. And as one of the boys sent a startled look my way, and I took this to mean I was right. Someone Oh! Right as I started to shout, however, I heard the crackle of electricity and a sharp pain rushed along my spine.
静かにしなよ。別に俺たちだってあんたを無理やり連れて行きたいわけじゃない。
Jesus Christ! Then someone moved around behind me and pressed something hard against my back. My whole body broke out in a cold sweat as my heart pounded in my chest, but I kept a straight face to conceal my internal panic. What are you planning to do with me once we get there?
別に何も。ただ、可愛い弟を迎えに行ってやらないとね。姉さん。
This is just happening in broad daylight? I'm not your sister.
それはあいつもだろう。
Shut the fuck up.
あいつは全部知ってるよ。あんたが実の姉どころか、義理の姉ですらないってことも。自分とは全くの他人なんだ。
So what? The icy sneer fell from his face and he raised his eyebrows. Evidently he wasn't expecting me to be so unruffled. Meanwhile, I was debating whether to start shouting again. As I looked around, I made eye contact with several passerbys on the street, but the delinquents glared at him until they left. This was very clearly a trap, but I couldn't just let these thugs beat Gretel black and blue. Fine, I go with you. Now where are we going? I had a bad feeling about this, but I didn't have a choice. Now that I had agreed, one of them grabbed me by the arm again. Relax. I don't need you to escort me. I'm not going anywhere. As I shook them off, someone let out a whistle. Just then my cell phone started to ring inside my book bag. Someone shoved me from behind and I stumbled forward. Then the leader took my phone out of my bag and powered it off.
これは没収ね。
Why do they suddenly have phone? Hello! As I walked, I began to drop the items from my bag one by one, being as quiet as possible so they wouldn't know. Ah! Haha, so that's where the fairy tale finally comes in. It was a risky move, but this way if something happened to me, perhaps someone could follow their trail to my location. The delinquents brought me to a deserted part of the forest. The sun had already set and the branches blocked out any remaining light until I could scarcely walk without a flashlight. My brain was screaming at me not to go any further, but with my captors on all sides I was boxed in. Besides, I couldn't leave until I made sure Gretel was still alive. I came to an abrupt stop and the guy behind me crashed into me. Where is he? To answer me, the boys all pointed their flashlights at the base of one particular tree. There, someone who looked like Gretel was tied to the tree, just as I'd seen in the video. He appeared to be unconscious. Are you okay? I dashed up to him and peered into his face. And that was when I discovered that he wasn't greatly at all. I knew it. I knew it. You can tie anyone to a tree and have him scream out sister if it's just on a flimsy phone camera. Recorded on a flimsy phone camera. This was a trap. Of course it is. I don't like where this is going. I tried to bolt, but someone grabbed me and tried to put me in a full Nelson. What the fuck? Wait, what? Nelson? What's a... What? What's a Nel... Okay. Guess Google doesn't have an answer for me. Summoning all of my strength, I pushed him away as hard as I could. I attempted to use this window of opportunity to get away, but then Gretel stood up and grabbed my arm. No! Oh no. No, 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 no. Desperate to break free, I used my other hand to punch him, but the other guy, the one I shoved, yanked my hair and slammed me to the ground. The sharp pain made me grunt, but I had no time to lose, and during the pain I tried to get up, only to get the wind knocked out of me as someone kicked me in the gut. What do they even have against me? Unable to bear it, I collapsed face down onto the ground. Then someone yanked me up by the hair, raising my head. With a sadistic grin, the boy slapped me across the face. The sharp impact across my cheek knocked me back to the ground. Fear taking over my mind, I started to tremble. For the first time I realized I'm going to die. What? Die? Well, I guess... Someone help! You're in a deserted part of a forest. I don't think anyone can hear you. I screamed as loud as I could, but my body was shaking too hard to produce much of a sound. Their laughter echoed through the forest. I tried to crawl away from them on my hands and knees. Please don't tell me this is going where I think it's going. He grabbed me by the collar and flung me onto my back. Then someone shone a flashlight into my eyes, blinding me. Stop. But my desperate plea only seemed to further fuel their sadistic desires because things started to escalate. No, 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 no. I don't want to read that. If this is going where I think it's going, I don't want to read it out loud. Stop it, you ass. Yeah, he tried to pin my arms down so I dug my nails in, but he quickly pinned my wrists together with one hand. Next he reached for my mouth. I bit his hand as hard as I could. Fear was telling me that if I didn't fight back, they were going to make me wish I was dead. Ow! Sparks flew behind my eyelids. The leader grabbed me by the collar and punched me in the face. I felt a warm liquid trickling out of my nose and realized I was bleeding. My vision pitched sideways and my consciousness started to fade, but I bit my lip and used the pain to keep myself awake. The taste of copper spread inside my mouth. I just made fun of you a little and you use your entire gang to punch me into the ground? The leader reached a hand under my top. I wanted to scream, but could only manage to groan. I tried to resist by flailing my limbs, but he was far stronger than I was. Thank you! Thank you, Thrain! At this point, there was nothing else I could do. No matter what cunning plot I came up with, I couldn't put it into action. Goosebumps pricked up my arms as his warm breath brushed my neck. I could see his brightly dyed hair bobbing up and down. I closed my eyes and tried my best to shadow reality. All of a sudden, a voice rang out. I opened my eyes and squinted against the blinding bright light. Okay, we're good. At his command, he and the rest of his gang took off running. It's going to be Yoshi, isn't it? No, wait, whose voice is that? The one of the voice came running over to me, bringing his light with him. Who? It's Red Riding Hood! What? Red... As I stood up, I could feel aches and pain all over my body. Red crouched down and put a hand on my shoulder for support. Unlike those delinquents, his touch didn't trigger visceral disgust. Do I look like I'm not hurt? He took one look at my face and stared wide-eyed.
変だすぐに病院に行きましょう
Maybe he's actually a police officer this time. Hanging my head, I reached out and clutched at his riding hood.
ミス・アリス
My body was still shaking. After a brief moment of hesitation, he gently put his hand on mine.
安心してくださいもうあいつらはいません
Yeah, if this had gone any farther than it did,
私があなたを守ります
No. I would love some trigger warnings for this kind of content. The nightmare was over and I was safe. The dam burst and the tears poured down my
し
face.
っかりしてくださいとりあえず服をそうだこれをどうぞ
He pulled off his riding hood and put it on me. My vision was now blocked out with scarlet, but I could still feel his arm around me. After that, Red escorted me home. He tried several times to convince me to go to the hospital, but I didn't listen. I only wanted to go home. When we arrived at my house, no one was there. With Red's blessing, I went straight to the bathroom and took a shower. The steam made my scrapes sting, but I didn't care. I wanted to be clean again. The warm water washed all the dirt and grime away. After I finished my shower, I put on some clean clothes and returned to the living room. There I found Red waiting with a first aid
そこに
kit.
座っていてくださいとりあえず傷を手当てしないと
Fun that he would suddenly show up again. Okay. I sat in a chair as
頬
instructed.
の腫れは氷嚢を用意したのでこれをしばらく当ててください
He handed me a makeshift ice pack. Then he opened the first aid kit and took out some disinfectant and gauze.
触っても良いですか
Yes, you may. With my consent, he took my hand.
痛くないですか
No, I'm okay. He took my other hand and raised both my arms straight up into the air. No. He slowly rotated my arms, occasionally pausing to ask me about any
腕
pain.
は擦り傷だけのようですね
Next, he examined my legs and so on and so forth. Now that I think about it, how did you find me anyway? He averted his gaze as he knelt before
た
me.
またまあなたの持ち物が落ちているのを見つけて嫌な予感がして追ってきたんです
Oh,
そ
so
れ
it
に
did work.
森の中は私
Well,
の
of
得意分野
course, Red Riding Hood would know all about the forest, huh? That's fun. Oh, I see.
あれはわざとあなたがやったんですよね
Yeah.
傷ついたあなたに今言うべきことではないのかもしれませんが何をされるのか予想がつかなかったわけではない
Are you kidding me?
男は皆狼なんです
Game? They put a scene in there that is very much sexual assault. They have you get rescued by some guy, and they still have the audacity to put all manner wolves in there? Are you victim blaming her right now? Okay. I don't even know what I expected.
間髪間に合ったからよかったものの
These are definitely things you should say to someone right now. I could tell from the tone of his voice that he was sincerely concerned for me. Okay. But beside my apology, I didn't actually regret going with them. Even if they had assaulted me, I could have accepted it as long as it meant Gretel was unharmed. What the fuck? If there was even a 1% chance of healing him, I would take any risk, even if I put my life in jeopardy. That was just the kind of girl I was. But I should have taken steps to hedge my bets, as it were. After that incident, I now knew that I didn't stand a chance against multiple armed attackers. In exchange for that knowledge, I merely had to endure some pain and fear and shame. Uh-huh. Thinking about it that way made it a little easier to bear.
すみません脅されれば誰だって怖い
Okay,
です
thank you! I'm glad you're realizing it.
配慮のない発言をしてしまいました
You are not person to This game is making me mad. I'm partially to blame for what happened. Sorry for scaring you and thank you for saving me. I smiled quickly. Red looked up at me for a moment and pulled his hood low over his eyes.
顔を見たいので、しばらくの間。
Oh, right, you cannot look at women, huh? As requested, I closed my eyes. Then I heard Red heave a sigh of relief. Okay. He pulled the ice pack away from my face and gingerly touched my wound. Feels like it's throbbing a little. Next, he checked my lower eyelids, then my upper eyelids.
幸い、目は傷ついてないようですね。私の声は正常に聞こえますか？
No, I can hear you.
鼓膜も異常なしと。とりあえず、目立った外傷は顔の傷と手のひらと足のかすり傷のようですね。
He grabbed the gauze and disinfectant off the table and set about patching me up.
他にどこか痛いところはありますか？
No. Oh, but I got kicked in the stomach. When I stripped down for my shower, I had noticed a bright red bruise there. Want to see?
いえ、いいです。
Okay. But I'm also this kind of person who's like, oh, I'm hurt there. Want to see? I feel sorry for whoever is on the other side of that if you say like, oh, hey, want to see? I got hurt. Flushing bead red, he hastily declined. I burst out laughing. Being red red helped me forget all about that miserable experience. He looked at me curiously. What?
いえ、意外と元気そうと言いますか。
In response, I spoke with a tone of forced cheer. Well, I can't change the fact that it happened. All I can do now is accept it, get over it, and start planning for the future. Besides, you scared them away before they could do anything really awful. Normally, this is the part where I'd wink playfully, but with my swollen cheek, I knew it wouldn't have the desired effect. Red looked at me intently for a moment and dropped his gaze to the
あ
floor.
なたは強いですね。ですが、無理はしないでください。あなたは確かに人より強いのかもしれませんが、か弱い女性でもあるのです。
I take back what I said earlier tonight about her not, her personality being completely different. I still think she's very strong. Because, you know, for most of the route she was kind of like not doing much, I guess. But she's still very much written to be a very strong character. That seems kind of contradictory. I snickered. But I knew he was only trying to be compassionate in his own way. Thank you, Red. After I expressed my gratitude yet again, he returned to his examination. As he applied the gauze to my cheek, I decided to ask him something that was on my mind. Come to think of it, do you know those boys?
近所の不良学生ですよね。森の中で隠れてタバコを吸っていたり、
Oh,
酒を飲んでいるのを目撃したことがあります。
I see. Maybe that was a hangout spot. Red furrowed his brow at me.
まさか復讐しに行くつもりでは。
No, don't worry, I won't do anything dangerous. I denied it with a smile, but Red's serious expression didn't waver. I don't have a serious expression of my own. Those guys seem to have a bone to pick with Gretel.
グレーテルとですか。
Have you heard anything?
いえ。彼は頭が良いですし、そういった輩と付き合うとは思えません。
I like that they just throw Red in there and apparently he knows both me and Gretel, but I'm not quite sure what he's supposed to be. If he knows them, they could actually call the police. That's true. On the other hand, they don't have anything they could charge them with. I mean, yes, they can call the police and tell them, hey, okay, they beat me up, they punched me in the face and kicked me in the gut, but they don't have anything else. What would the police do? It's just a punch in the face and a kick in the gut. And a horrible experience all around, but nothing bad happened. Please believe me when I say I'm making little signs here, but like, what would the police even do for something like this? Yeah.
ですが、
ん
以前彼が起こした暴行事件、それに何らかの関係があるかもしれませんね。
I sank deep into thought. If these two things were connected, then perhaps Gretel's victim was a member of this delinquent gang.
ミス・アリス、あまり気にしない方がいい。
Who can I talk to learn more about these punks?
ミス・アリス、
He reprimanded me
あ
sharply.
なたはひどい目にあったばかりでしょう。そういうことは警察に任せて。
Oh, okay.
あなたはしばらく何も
I'm guessing he's actually a part of the police this time then. The police? The realization hit me. You have to file a report about this, don't you?
当たり前です。
Oh!
彼らがやったことはれっきとした犯罪行為です。ですが、とりあえずまずは病院に。
Be honest, how bad is my face?
は？
Is it super obvious I got punched in the face?
それは
He hesitated. When I saw my swollen face in the bathroom mirror, it made me want to cry. Honestly, I didn't even want Red to see me like this, but crying wouldn't fix anything. I couldn't change the past, I could only plan for the future. I grabbed Red's arm and backed him. If you see Gretel, please don't tell him what happened, okay? I don't want him to know.
なぜですか？彼が事件に関係があるとあなた自身分かっているはずでは。
That's exactly why. Before I knew it, I was rambling. If he finds out I hurt me, there's no telling what he might do. Like you said, Gretel has a bit of a checkered past, and if he acts out again, he might not be able to redeem himself. He wants to go to the same college as me, and if he causes another incident, they might not accept him. So please, whatever you do, don't tell Gretel a single thing about what happened today. Eventually, Red gave in to my pleading.
それは分かりましたが、あなたはこの先どうするつもりですか？
Thank you for the idle time. For now, I'm going to keep my distance from Gretel until my injuries heal. Oh! Well, that's a fantastic idea, Eureka. After all, won't look at me and he'll instantly know something bad happened.
どこに行くつもりですか？
I started to say Ryoshi's house and changed my mind. I get a hotel room or something. Lucky for me, we have a lot of those in this town. Then I have Mom and Dad tell Gretel that I left to stay with them in the city for a while.
彼は信じるでしょうか？
Absolutely not. It won't matter if he believes it, I'll already be gone. And if he calls my phone, he'll know that I'm okay.
学校はどうするんですか？
I won't be able to attend class for a while, but it hardly matters at this stage. My main priority is keeping this hush-hush. Now that I was committed to a plan of action, I couldn't just sit around. That's a horrible plan! I left Red in the living room and ran upstairs to my bedroom. I came straight home in order to avoid making a huge scene, but that was a mistake. The longer I stayed, the more likely I'd run into Gretel. I flung some clothes into my suitcase at random, then headed out of my room.
姉さん、なんで？
Would you look at that? But when I opened the door, Gretel was waiting for me on the other side.
どうしたんですか？
His expression was stiff. Oh, this. I tripped and fell. I purposely replied in a jokey, light-hearted tone.
やられたんですか？
Nope.
嘘だ。
No, I'm not.
姉さん！
Wee. He snapped sharply. It's nothing, okay? I put my arms around him to console him.
姉さん。
There's nothing to worry about. But Gretel grabbed my shoulders and pushed me away. His eyes were narrowed piercingly, my body froze in fear. Gretel. Wordlessly, he grabbed me by the arm and dragged me back into my room. Gretel, wait! Then he pushed me down onto the bed and started prodding at all the areas where Red had patched me up. My cheek, my arms, my palms, and lastly my thighs. Every time he touched a sore spot, my body shivered.
やっぱり何かされたんですね。頬がひどく腫れてる。それに手足も擦り傷。
Ah, ha ha ha.
手首にもうっすらと手の跡が残ってる。
Without hesitation, Gretel hiked up my top. As I felt the air against my skin, goosebumps broke out all over my body. Oh right, someone kicked us
誰かに殴られた跡だ。
in the stomach as well. Right.
されたんですか？
No.
誰かにレイプされたんですか？
No. Oh wow. Okay, you're. I denied it at the top of my lungs. I wasn't. I'm fine.
なら何をされたんですか？なんで
Well, that's what I'd like to
そんな目に遭わ
know.
なければならなかったんですか？
I brought it upon myself, that's all.
自業自得って何ですか。優秀な姉さんが自業自得なんてそんなことあるわけない。
I'm not as perfect as you think I am, Gretel.
なんで僕には言ってくれないんですか。赤ずきんさんには言ったんですよね。あの人には言えて僕には言えない理由って何ですか。
It's not that.
何が違うんですか。
Jesus Christ!
僕のせいで姉さんがこんな目に。だから姉さんは
No!
なら言ってください。僕のためを思うなら誰に何をされたか正直に言ってください。
I knew I was trapped. Nevertheless, I lied without batting a lash. On my way home, a stranger tried to pull me into their car, but Red rescued me.
本当に
Yes.
ならなぜすぐに警察に行かなかったんですか。それに病院にも。
I did, see? I'm all patched up. I guess you did the bandages Red had applied for me.
嘘だ。
No, I...
救急箱にあったガーゼと消毒液が減っていました。
When did he even come home?
嘘をつかないでください。
He hung his head and started to tremble. Gretel. His tears fell onto my chest. Reflexively, I reached out to touch his cheek, but instead he kissed the back of my hand.
姉さん姉さん姉さん
What's going on?
かわいそうな姉さん。こんなにボロボロにされて痛かったですよね。怖かったですよね。なのに僕が助けてあげられなくてごめんなさい姉さん。
He pulled me tight against his chest and began to sob. The back of my throat burned like it was on fire, as did the corners of my eyes, but I fought desperately to contain my tears. I couldn't let myself be weak in front of him. After a long embrace, Gretel slowly pulled away. His eyes were red and
姉
puffy.
さんこれを食べてください。嫌な思い出を消してしまいましょう。
Gretel. The next thing I knew, Gretel was holding a jar in his hand. As the tears rolled down his face, he smiled and opened the lid. I slowly shook my head. I couldn't escape. I was still pinned down beneath
大
him.
丈夫です。少しの間。
So it's not just sweets, you have sleeping pills as well? With that, he popped a few star candies into his mouth and kissed me. I tried to pull away, but he wedged my lips open with his tongue and pushed the candy in. Gretel. A long, long kiss followed, and by the time we finally came up for air, a string of saliva hung between our lips. It shone seductive. Did it? I'm sorry. I cannot take this seriously. It shone seductively, provocatively, and despite the circumstances, it was enough to set my body aflame. Evidently, Gretel felt the same way, but somehow I could see darkness in those damp eyes and flushed cheeks.
姉さん
After that, he administered his medicine again and again.
すみません。僕たちは兄弟なのに。
So the star-shaped sweets are some kind of medicine.
今日だけは特別です。特別なこと好きでしょ。
You shouldn't overdose on sleeping pills. My mind started to go fuzzy as an intense wave of drowsiness washed over me.
大丈夫。そのまま眠気に身を沈ませている。
Or whatever kind of pills that exactly is, you should not overdose
全
on
部夢だ
those.
と思うようになりますよ。これは嫌な夢。悪魔が見せた悪い
Ah, so those are the demons, huh?
目が覚めたらまた一緒に楽しく暮らしましょう。
He gave me one last peck on the lips. Then the jar slipped out of his hands. Red, blue, green, yellow. A rainbow of colors scattered all over the bed and floor as if the room had transformed into Candyland. Gretel. He left me there and ran out of the house. I could barely think straight, but I chased after him nonetheless. At one point, I stuck a finger down my throat and tried to clear my stomach. No. I tried again and again, but nothing came up. Tears flowed down my face and fell to the floor. I knew this would happen. Did you? And that was when my consciousness faded. I think if you had been more clear with your very smart little brother, this maybe would not have happened. Ryoshi. I woke in a hospital room. Is this a dream? Or is this real life?
Oi, Yurika, 大丈夫か?
What happened?
連絡を受けて急いで帰ってきたら、お前が倒れているのを見つけてな。慌てて救急車を呼んだんだ。
Also, it's so... This is still a flashback, right? This all happened before. Who told you?
ああ、警察から電話がかかってきてな。近所の不良どもがお前を襲っていたという匿名通報があったと。
That anonymous tip probably came from Red. He must have called it in after he left my house. Where's Gretel?
家にはいなかった。おそらくお前を襲った奴らに復讐しに行ったんだろう。お前に睡眠薬と興奮薬をミックスして飲ませた。
Ooh,
量を間違えれば危なかったぞ。
anti-anxiety pills. And said it.
とりあえずお前はここでおとなしくしてろ。俺があいつを探し出す。
Ryoshi, you haven't told...
まだ言ってねえよ。本当なら協力してもらうのが筋なんだろうが、事情が事情だしな。
Thank you. Wordlessly, Ryoshi stroked my hand and got up and left the room. Battling with the pain and fatigue, I forced myself upright. I looked around for any helpful information, but all I could tell was that I had spent close to 24 hours here in this hospital room. I had only been treated for my external injuries, no stomach pump that I could see. Outside the window, the sun was starting to set. I needed to find Gretel before it got dark, that way we could go home together. Spurred forward by impulse, I jumped to my feet. Are you kidding me? Why can't... Having managed to escape the hospital, I found myself wandering through the forest. Night had fallen and all was dark. A distinctly bad feeling descended over me. Hurry, hurry. I have to find him before Ryoshi does. I knew Ryoshi was only worried for our safety, but if he got to Gretel before I did, he would lock him up again. And this time it might actually destroy him completely. Just then I caught a whiff of alcohol in the breeze. Alcohol? But it wasn't just alcohol. There was an indescribably horrid stank mixed in as well. I came to a stop and overheard some voices. Male voices sniffling, and a very familiar laughter. Uh-oh.
アルコール度数が高いお酒は火がつけば燃えるんだってさ。試してみる。
I could see several figures deep in the woods. Then a tiny orange light flared up, illuminating the very person I'd been searching for. At his feet lay a group of youths, all of them bleeding heavily.
もうやめてください。許してください。
ダメだ。
悪魔。悪魔はお前らの方だろ。姉さんを食べようとしたくせに。ゴミは焼却処分にしなくちゃいけないよね。死んで詫びろよ。クソ野郎だま。
Whee! Stop! Just in the nick of time, I managed to wrap my arms around him from behind.
姉さん。
Upon closer inspection, I noticed Gretel was injured in a few areas too. Gretel, you're bleeding. Now does he donned a dashing smile and wiped his bloody cheek with his sleeve.
触らない方がいいですよ。こいつらの汚い血なんて触ったら何を移されるか分かったもんじゃありませんからね。安心してください。もうすぐこの薄汚いゴミを
Okay.
まとめて焼却処分に
Please
してあげ
don't
ます
set
か
a
ら。
giant fire in the forest. With that, he moved to light his match. No! I snatched at the matchstick from behind him. It slipped out of his fingers and fell to the ground.
何をするんですか。もったいない。まあいいです。別にこれだけ
How
じゃ
did
あ
he
りま
even
せん
round
し
them up this fast? He pulled out another match. Please don't do this.
こんなこと。僕が姉さんのためにやっていることについてですか。気にすることはありません。姉さんに汚れ役をやらせるつもりはありません。
I'm sorry, everyone. This is all my fault.
なんで姉さんが謝るんです。姉さんを傷つけたのは。
He kicked one of the delinquents lying at his feet. That's enough! I screamed at the top of my lungs. Enough already, just stop. If you go any further, he'll die.
は？別に死んだっていいじゃないですか。こんな社会のゴミ。生きてたって。どうせろくな大人になりゃしませんよ。
Murder in my Otome game?
していいことと悪いことの
More likely than you think? Suddenly I shook my hand. Tears streamed out uncontrollably down my face.
かばうんですか？こいつは姉さんを襲ったやつなんですよ。危うく姉さんはこいつらに侵されるところだったんですよ。姉さんの大事な体に傷をつけて、心にも傷を負わせた。下手すれば一生残るかもしれなかったんですよ。
But it wasn't. I'm fine now.
僕は平気じゃない。
Oh,
姉さんを傷つけた奴らがこれからも堂々と生きてるってことに虫唾が走るんですよ。
that's very valid, but I don't think murder's the right way to go about it. I'm begging you, please just stop. I just want to go home with you, and if you cross that line, I... But right as he slumped his shoulders in defeat... Eh! Suddenly I felt the vibration of an impact against my arms as they clung to Gretel. I looked up to find that Yoshi had seized Gretel by the collar, his eyes blazing. Yoshi! My beloved older brother had punched Gretel. I had never seen Yoshi this emotional in all my life. I shrank back.
叱るなら僕を。姉さんは僕のためにわざわざ怖い思いをしながら僕を追いかけてきてくれたんです。
Gretel.
グレーテル、お前自分が何をしようとしていたか分かってるのか？お前がやってることは人殺しだぞ。
分かってますよ。それがどうしたんですか？
どうしたって。
His matter-of-fact demeanor sent a chill down my spine. Likewise, Yoshi seemed to be at a loss for words. Then, after a moment, he turned and approached the thugs on the ground.
とりあえず説教は後だ。おい、大丈夫か？しっかりしろ。
助けて。
今救急車を呼んでやる。全員息はあるみたいだな。
The delinquents had been rendered immobile, so Yoshi turned to them as he prepared to call the hospital.
何やってるんですか？そんな奴ら放っておいたらいいじゃないですか。
そうはいくか。すみません。大至急救急車をお願いしたいのですが。はい。
Somewhere in the middle of the forest, that's my current location. Okay, sure, we'll send one.
あんたの妹を襲った奴らですよ。
だからといって暴力が許されるわけないだろう。お前がぶっ殺そうとしたこいつらにだって家族はいるんだよ。
家族なら僕は虫けら以下の存在だということですか？
Gretel.
だってそうでしょう。僕には家族がいないんですから。
Oh shit.
家族じゃないだなんて。そんなこと誰に言われなくても分かってましたよ。僕はあんたたちと違って優秀でも何でもない石ころだってことくらい。だからいろいろ頑張ってきたじゃないか。勉強だってスポーツだって優秀なあんたたちに認められたくて
There it is.
今まで必死こいてやってきたんだよ。
グレーテル。
うるさいうるさい。
分かっていた。気づいていた。僕があなたたちと違って優秀でもましてや天才でもない。勉強もスポーツも陰で努力をしながら今の地位を築き上げてきたんだ。ただ姉さんに追いつきたい一心で姉さんと繋がっていたい一心で築き上げた理想の自分。なんでお前たちはそれをぶっ壊そうとするんだよ。姉さん僕は姉さんにだけは捨てられたくない。僕を見捨てないでください。
As he stood there crying and covered in blood, I pitied him more than anyone else here. My actions had hurt him, and now they had caused him to hurt others. I could only think of one way to keep him from hurting even more. So I reached out and kissed him on the cheek.
姉さん
Then I gently took him by the hand and took off running.
おい、ユリカ、グレーテル。
That... Okay! I could hear Yoshi calling after us, but I didn't look back. I didn't need any guideposts to find my way home, because to me that wasn't my home anymore. The two siblings were lost in the woods, with only moonlight illuminating their path. With no trail of breadcrumbs, they would never find their way home again.
僕たちこのままどこへ行けばいいんでしょう。
Aha! I don't know. But it'll work out. I'm going to keep you safe.
姉さん
Wait, I need a screenshot of this. Just then, the black cat appeared out of nowhere, swishing her tail as she trotted deeper into the forest. Is she trying to guide us? Every time we approached her, she ran off deeper into the woods. Ultimately, she led us to a small cottage. There, she paused to lounge on the roof for a moment, but when we walked up, she ran off again. What is this place? Welcome to Sweet Home. And so they arrived at the candy house. What? And we're back here. What the fuck is going on? Gretel. One look at his tears and the fog cleared from my memories. His actions, my actions. He had thrown himself into the fires of hell just for me.
姉さんにだけは捨てられたくないんです。
Okay, but... No, I won't question it. I'll just
僕を家
read.
に置いてくれた両親や兄にはどれだけ嫌われたっていい。見捨てられても構わない。でも姉さんだけは僕の手を。なのに僕は
Resilient again, bro.
姉さんを見る
Yay!
たびに思うんです。
Nice! That's good.
なんで美味しそうなんだ。食べてしまいたいって。
If he devoured me, it would mean the end of our relationship as siblings.
姉さんは知らないでしょう。僕がずっとそんな風に思っていただなんて。それともずっと知っててわざとやってたんですか。ずるいですよね。姉さんは甘い匂いで人を誘っておいて食べたら危険だなんてこんな残酷なことってありますか。姉さん、僕はあなたが食べたくてしょうがない。お腹が空いてたまらないんです。姉さん、僕を拒絶してください。姉さん、僕を諭してください。
Hmm.
姉さん、姉さん、姉さん、僕を助けて。
Gretel. I was the one making him suffer. This was my punishment for falling in love with the man who was supposed to be my brother. In light of Gretel's suffering, what will you do? We will save. And tell him not to eat me. Because if we tell him to eat us, we get a bad ending. You can't have me. Don't give in to temptation, Gretel. I'll be going hungry same as you. As much as I crave that sugar, I hold myself back. And no matter what delicious food you prepare for me, if you're not having any, then neither will I. I'll be whatever you want me to be. A girlfriend, a friend, a sister. I promote myself to any piece on a chessboard. I'll craft your ideal version of me. And if you so desire, I'll give you all of me. You're my precious baby brother, your family, Gretel, and I love you.
そうですよね。姉さんを食べるだなんて。そんな恐ろしい。
Okay, they both have some problems. Just then his hands started to shake and his breathing grew labored. Gretel, what's wrong? He hastily jumped out of bed and staggered to the kitchen. There he grabbed a certain jar I recognized all too well. That's...
これはあの人が僕にくれた僕専用のお菓子ですよ。これを食べると僕の病気が治るそうです。
It's anti-anxiety
姉
pills,
さんも
yes?
知ってますよね。僕は病気なんだそうです。おかしな話ですよね。僕はこんなにも健康なのに。
Though anti-anxiety pills will not cure you of your anxiety. He opened the lid with a bunch of random colors and popped them all into his mouth at once. Hello, hello, good evening. You're supposed to take them one at a time, Gretel. But he ignored me and swallowed the whole rainbow. So he is regularly overdosing on his sedatives and anti-anxiety pills. That can't be healthy. Oh, Gretel. What the fuck? What kind of siren was that outside? There was a siren playing outside for just like a few seconds. It just went whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not how the police usually sounds. I quietly shook my head. That's what you dosed me with? I looked at the jar. Was it a car alarm? I don't think so. That's a new sprite. He's going completely off the rails. I let out a dry laugh. I had always faintly suspected him of drugging me, and now here he was admitting it flat out. I didn't really know how to feel about it. Do you want me to be angry? He felt silent and averted his gaze. He's so sweet and naive. No, I'm not angry. I'm the one who pushed you to do this. Sometimes intentionally, other times inadvertently. It's not like you brought me here against my will. I came here of my own volition, so what's there to get angry about? I can't help it. I love you. I have no clue where this story is supposed to be going. Fine by me. You can lock me up or do whatever you want with me. Jesus Christ. I love you no matter what. Do you? The room was dark. With the curtains closed, I couldn't tell day from night. Not only that, but he had taped the edges to the wall so that not even a sliver of light could get through. In here it was darker than night, as if I was living in a world consumed by darkness. Gretel stood in the center of the darkened room. My eyes hadn't adjusted, so I couldn't see his expression, but his tone was rather upbeat. You know, we also need air in here. If you tape the... Okay. Just moments ago, Gretel was crying, but evidently the candy had kicked in, and now he was back to his usual self. Was I meant to feel relieved or scared? I could no longer tell what the sane reaction was. I was too numb by this point. But now that I had my memories back, I had a clear understanding of Gretel's objective. As he stated earlier, he wanted to coddle me. He tied me up, cut the heat, and blocked out the light in order to remove my agency and shut out the outside world. That way I would be forced to rely on him to survive. Perhaps the best way to put it was, he wanted to keep me as a pet. He sat down beside me on the edge of the bed and stroked my hair. I moved to rest my hand on his shoulder, but stopped myself. Gretel and I weren't lovers, we were only brother and sister, and I had nearly walked right into his trap. Where are they planning on going with this story? Like, they can't keep themselves hidden in the middle of the forest in this weird cottage forever, right? Right. With my eyes closed, I couldn't see a thing, but my other senses were heightened and I could feel him close to me. This happiness was phony, warped, twisted, but if I still counted as happiness, then maybe a little twist here and there wouldn't hurt. And so we lived happily ever after. The end. If only. I thought back to Gretel's emotional outburst earlier. The way he consumed the candy was abnormal to say the least. He was clearly exceeding the intended dose. His shaking and sweating were obvious symptoms of withdrawal. After continued consumption, he had built up a tolerance to it, thus he needed to eat more and more to achieve the same effect, and now he had lost control. A familiar story. Gretel's dependence on sugar had driven him into sweet madness. Hey, Gretel. I fixed him with a probing look. My eyes had finally adjusted to the darkness, and now I could see not just the outline of his face, but his expression as
ど
well.
うしたんですか？何かおねだりですか？
I want a sweet treat.
おかしいですか？
He seemed a bit taken aback. No surprise there, of course. After all, he had only just revealed to me that his treats would muddle my
いい
memories.
ですよ。何をご所望ですか？
Gretel rose to his feet and headed for the kitchen. As I watched him go, he answered with, I'll eat anything you make. It was something of a stock reply at this point. In the darkness, Gretel set about making a sweet treat per my request, but of course he needed light to see what he was doing, so he had lit an alcohol burner. Meanwhile, I watched his every move. The way he couldn't lace the food without me knowing, but at no point did this seemingly occur. Granted, my view of sense was limited, and soon the dessert was ready.
はい。どうぞ。
He offered it to me and I let him put it in my mouth. I chewed slowly, severing it, then finally swallowed. Yummy! As far as I could tell, it was a sweet treat and nothing more. In fact, I was starting to question whether he'd added anything at all.
記憶が混濁してしまうおかしなお菓子で
Hmm?
怖くないんですか？
No. His lips twisted in a defeated smile.
本当に嫌になりますよ。
At this, I knew my suspicions were correct. He hadn't laced my food with anything at all. It was just a dessert. While my memories were indeed hazy in the beginning, that effect had faded over the past few days. His candy was by no means endless. It would run out eventually. Factoring in the amount he used on me, he was going to burn through it very soon. The jar was already at just 1/3 of its capacity. He probably wanted to conserve as much as possible in order to keep himself stable, so he reduced my allotment to 0. Sugar-free, 0 calories. I could eat as much as I wanted and I'd never go mad. The thing is, Gretel, I love you no matter who you are.
僕が悪者でも
Yep,
僕が異常者でも
I still love you. I answered without a single second of
こ
hesitation.
んな僕を迷いなく好きだと言ってのける姉さんの方こそ
Maybe I
異常なの
am.
かもしれませんね。
For playing this game, yes. I smiled in spite of myself. You're just so incredible. You care about me and you always do your best to look out for me. I couldn't be prouder to call you my brother.
姉さん
But you shouldn't eat too much candy. Right now you're in danger of overdosing. You could die, Gretel.
だからといって今さらやめるわけにはいきませんよ。
Then ease up of them a little at a time. I knew putting him through candy withdrawal would only make him suffer more, but if he reduced his intake little by little, perhaps his body could adapt. Truth be told, he was better off consulting Yoshi about the stuff, but that wasn't feasible right now. We had sacrificed a lot to come this far. We weren't abandoned by our family, we abandoned them. My beloved sister lay asleep beside me. Oh, it's from his point of view. Okay. She was all snuggled up against me, possibly due to the cold. I prodded her cheek. She squirmed and let out a tiny groan. I poked her again, and she pulled the covers up over her head. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. I dearly loved getting a reaction out of her. The more I teased her, the more reactions I'd get, and it made me want to tease her even more. I cupped her cheek in my hand and found her skin colder than I was expecting. Strange, since every part pressed against me was practically on fire. Or was it me that was burning up? I wrapped my arms around her in an embrace. Her slow, rhythmic breath tickled my neck, and I could feel her chest pressed up against mine. I let out a long sigh. I wanted to touch her perfect porcelain skin. I wanted to bury my face in her slender neck and kiss her red lips. This was a trap. I could crush her beneath my feral instincts, but then I'd lose the very thing that mattered to me most. And that was what scared me more than anything else. I whispered in her ear. As I pulled away from her, I was suddenly gripped with frustration and anxiety, so I jumped out of bed and ate some candy out of the jar. I could hear my sister's voice in my head telling me not to eat them, but I choked down and fed them with the rest of the sugar. My flat, emotionless laugh echoed through the quiet room. Then I fell to my hands and knees. Sister, 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 you're my only family. We may not be related by blood, but you're still my sister, and I can't consume you. With her delectable body, she was practically begging me to do it, but the instant I did, I would lose my sister. What a wicked witch she was. I could never rebel against her. If I tied her up, blinded her eyes, and gagged her mouth, if I took everything from her, would I finally be free? Could I keep her as my sister? I looked at the jar next to me. Soon it would be empty. How many days did I have left? I knew full well that this happiness would never last. Right now I could control myself with candy, but what would happen to me once it ran out? Maybe I would stop thinking rationally. Maybe I would turn into a demon and devour my sister. I needed to get more candy somehow, and I knew where to find it. But if Yoshi caught me, he would take me away from my sister again. Sure, I could go without seeing her for a while if I had to, but in a worst case scenario, he might kill me. Either way, I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. You have to do what? Also, hello to the wizard. He appeared practically out of thin air. I glared at him. Here in this dark void, he was only a shadow. This was the witch's familiar, the black cat who had led us here. I didn't know what he was planning, so I needed to keep my guard up around him. How's your quarantine going? Okay, what?
それは良かった。君たちのために着るものも食べるものも困ることがないよう用意してあげてたからね。その他にも君の頼みを叶えてあげたりもした。
そうだったかな。
I averted my eyes.
そうだよ。君が僕に頼んだんだろう。僕がいない間に現れて姉さんを誘惑してほしいんです。
あ。
僕のモノマネはやめろ。うざい。
だから僕はわざわざ彼女の前に姿を現した。君は姉さんを大好きだっていう割には彼女のことを信じてないんだね。君は不安なんだ。姉さんが僕を置いて遠くに行ってしまうことが。だから君は試した。姉さんにわざと意地悪したりいたずらしたり嘘をついてみたり。結果姉さんは出て行かなかった。さすが僕の姉さん、僕の味方。
さっきからごちゃごちゃうるせえな。要件はなんだよ。
Scream at him any louder and Yurika might wake up. Unable to suppress my irritation, I snapped at him.
君の本性を知られたら姉さんに呆れられちゃうかもしれないね。グレーテル君、あなたがこんな人だったとは思わなかったよ。なんてさ。黙れ。君は優等生のふりをしているけど、中身は凶悪凶暴極まりない。おまけにジャンキー。漁師の言葉を借りるなら、君は異常者で問題児で不良だね。
The next thing I knew, I was swinging my fist. But he dodged easily. I should have known the pitch darkness would hinder me.
やだな。突然殴りかからないでよ。
Oh. Besides, you might wreck your precious old... Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I glanced over at her. She had moved an inch. The sight filled me with relief. I let out a long breath and stared into the abyss.
僕は忙しいんです。あんたとこれ以上遊んでる暇はありません。
お菓子が切れかかっているから。グレーテル君、君はかわいそうな少年だ。君はただ守りたかっただけなの。姉さんとの面白おかしい生活を、キラキラと輝く宝石のような日々を奪われたくなかっただけなの。優秀な僕の姉さん、美人で頭が良くて何でもできる僕の憧れの人。僕と彼女は濃い絆でつながっていると思って。でもそれは君の勘違いだった。君はその事実を知った時悲しんだ。それとも嬉し…黙れ！グレーテル君、君が欲しいと言うなら
Don't do it. I don't think it's a good idea to trust the wizard. As he spoke, he produced a full jar of candy seemingly out of nowhere. I don't trust this guy for a single second. It felt pointless to ask him how he knew about the candy or where he'd gotten his paws on it. After all, there were bigger questions on the table, such as why no one had managed to find us. More than a week had passed since we first arrived here. What was everyone else doing? Surely they would have come looking for us by now, and we weren't that well hidden. And yet our only visitor thus far was the wizard. I didn't know what he was planning. What was his goal in letting us take shelter in here? What magic was keeping the rest of the world at bay? Frankly, none of it mattered. Yeah, that's right. I knew he was manipulating me, and I was manipulating him right back.
僕が欲しいのは
Huh?
キラキラと輝く方。君が愛してやまないそれを手放すなら、僕は君にお菓子をあげる。
That's not fair. Born to a high-class family, I never had to go without. Anything I wanted, I got. Fancy clothes, tasty food, a dazzling reputation, and even the warmth of love. But I knew my family's situation was different from the norm. My older sister and I lived in a house in the countryside together, just the two of us. Our parents had their own place in a big city where they worked. Maybe other people would see this as a scandalous way to raise your children, but we were all okay with it, so in my view it was perfectly fine. Besides, they gave us a hefty allowance and always made sure to visit us a few times per month when they had time off. I didn't resent them. In fact, I was extremely grateful. After all, thanks to them and their prestigious careers, I lived better than the majority of my peers. But though I appreciated them, my connection with them was tenuous at best, and I had no special memories of them. To me, I guess you could say they felt less like parents and more like benefactors. No surprise there, of course. All the love and discipline a child would normally receive from their parents was instead administered by my sister. She cooked for me, she helped me with my homework, she looked after me. Whenever we shared a dessert, she would always give me the bigger piece. She praised all my smallest accomplishments. She gave me everything I ever wanted. With her around, I didn't miss our parents. My sister was exceptionally gifted. She excelled at everything she tried, and she got top marks in every subject, despite seemingly never needing to study. Not only that, but she was beautiful, cheerful, and a social butterfly. She always took center stage. She had the ability to succeed without ever putting any real effort in. To me, she was worth her weight in jewels, and I respected her from the bottom of my heart. I wanted to be in her league, so I struggled to be every bit as perfect as she was. Be it schoolwork or sports, I worked hard to ensure I was number one. I was diligent, composed, and perfectly polite. I was a cut above the rest, and my sister seemed to love this about me. She'd always smile and say, "You're so amazing, Gretel," and each time I told myself that I was worthy of her. Ah, yes, I carry the same blood in my veins. I was born to an exemplary family, so I must be exemplary too. That was what I told myself. Then one day, I was strolling down an empty hallway. I had stayed at school later than usual to run an errand for my teacher. I let out a sigh. As a model student, everyone was always turning to me for help. My teachers and classmates were all totally helpless without me. I couldn't stand it. I wasn't completely miserable here at this school, but I was growing tired of it. Ideally, I wanted to attend college with my sister. I wanted to sit in the same classroom with her, listen to the same lectures as her, attend the same events as her, and walk to and from school with her. I know it was a pipe dream, of course, but it was by no means impossible to achieve. As long as there was even a tiny chance, I couldn't let go. I wanted nothing more than to go home, eat my sister's cooking, and have her help with my homework. As I passed by a classroom, however, I caught a whiff of the world's most nauseating scent. Instantly my good mood was spoiled, and I let another sigh. One of the other students was smoking a cigarette. He was a notorious delinquent who spent his time running with the wrong crowd instead of attending school. Riff-raff, if you ask me. I didn't want to interact with him, but we had already made eye contact, so I didn't have a choice.
君、未成年でしょ?
At my question, he exhaled a cloud of smoke, dropped the cigarette to the floor, and crushed it under his heel. This infuriated me, but I limited myself to just a glare. Not wanting to get involved any further, I hastily packed up my things so I could get away from him, but then I heard him snicker.
お前、本当の家族じゃないんだってな。
え?
みんな知ってるよ。お前がもらわれっ子だってさ。お前さ、あの姉ちゃんと二人で暮らしてんだろ？血が繋がってないのに一つ屋根の下に住んでるとか、やらしい。
Instantly I felt a murderous impulse flare, but I quickly thought better of it. I couldn't stoop to this idiot's level. I had more self-respect than that, and better things to do with my free time. But I couldn't stop my hands from balling into fists. Then as I kept my back turned, he said something he really shouldn't have.
毎日姉ちゃんの裸見ておなってんだろ？変態。
Oh! Okay, honestly? Good on Gretel for beating that guy up. I'm not sorry. Before I even knew what I was doing, I'd hurled a chair in his direction. The moment he flinched, I dove at him. We both crashed to the ground, taking some desks with us. Then I climbed on top of him and punched him again and again. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have done it that often, but there's things one says and things some people just shouldn't say. With each blow, there was a dull thud as the impact made my whole arm tingle. Bleeding profusely from his broken nose, he begged for mercy, but it was too little too late. I was going to make sure he never made a comment like that ever again. The next thing I knew, a teacher rushed in and put me in a full Nelson. Meanwhile, the creep who had insulted me and my sister was now crying and bleeding all over the place. How pathetic. Normally, he acted like he was so much better than these authority figures, but now he was begging for their help. Fortunately, I could still move my feet, so when he reached his hand out, I stomped down on it mercilessly. As his scream echoed through the empty classroom, I thought to myself, The school contacted not my sister, but my older brother. Since our parents lived out of town and he was the oldest, he was listed as the primary point of contact. But I didn't like him very much at all. Unlike our parents, he worked locally, and although he didn't live with us, he still occasionally turned up on our doorstep to criticize our lifestyle. And unlike our sweet, thoughtful sister, he was cold and distant with me. Frankly, I found him highly unpleasant to be around. He was a hindrance to my happy life with my sister. He smacked me over the head and told me to apologize to my victim, his parents, and their teachers. He clearly didn't care about my feelings whatsoever. But if my sister were here, she would have asked me why I did what I did, and then she would have stood up for me. Suspended for 2 weeks. That was my punishment. But I didn't really object to this decision. While he was the one who started it, I clearly let my emotions get the better of me. That much I sorely regretted. If I was going to cross that line, I could have done a lot better. I could have made sure no one would find out about it. That way I wouldn't have been punished at all. But alas, it was too late. My only option was to avoid making the same mistake in the future. Besides, if I was going to be stuck at home, it would mean more time to spend with my sister. This was a much more efficient use of my time compared to wasting it on those idiots at school, and I couldn't ask for anything more. While I was at home, I could get ahead on all my schoolwork, that'd show them. Suddenly I was brimming with motivation, but right as I tried to go home to my sister, a demon stepped into my path.
笑ってるな。何がおかしいんだ。
別に。
お前は人を傷つけたんだぞ。ちゃんと反省しているのか。
してますよ。
なあ、グレーテル。
何ですか。
グレーテル。お前はしばらく
Okay, but like, Ryoshi should at least have asked him why he did it. You can't just put him into solitary confinement.
は？それはどういう意味ですか？
My brother sighed and shook his head. According to him, wailing on an opponent who couldn't fight back was problematic behavior. Personally, I thought skipping school, smoking in a classroom, and sexual harassment were all far more problematic than anything I had done, so I told him that. But my brother stubbornly refused to acknowledge my opinion. He tried to claim that I lacked ethics and morals. Then he tried to take me not to the house where my sister was waiting for me, but some cabin in the woods. He was always like this. He didn't treat me like a little brother, he treated me like a crazy person.
両親にはすでに了解を取ってある。
姉さんは
あいつには言ってない。言えば反対されるのは分かってるからな。
Once again, my sister was the only person I could trust, but she wasn't here. The demon grabbed my arm and tried to drag me away.
いいから来るんだ。
やだ、行きたくない。
Grateful. As I struggled, my sister turned up right in the nick of time. My savior, my holy mother. I reached out to her, but the demon ripped us apart. The demon locked me up in a stark white room. No matter how much I pounded on or kicked the door, it refused to budge. That's why he doesn't like white. But no matter how much I screamed, no one came to save me. Instead, they forced me out of my street clothes and into a hospital gown, then belted my arms and legs to the bed. What? Isn't that a little extreme? It was humiliating. Every waking moment was supervised and micromanaged.
異常者なんかじゃない。
When I tried to protest by refusing to eat my food, I ended up with an IV in my arm.
嫌だ。姉さん。
Under the effects of the medicine, I slowly lost the energy to fight or even think. Great! Great! Instead of talking... Oh, the window's over there. Instead of talking to the guy to even find out why he did what he did, they just put him on fucking sedatives. It made him... I don't know what that is supposed to say. How do you say this in English? But like, took all of his autonomy away, you know. The next day my parents came to visit. After a long harsh lecture about violence, they gave me a hug, but I felt nothing. No matter what pretty words they had to offer me, it didn't change the fact that they had consented to me being locked up in here. They had abandoned me. When they asked me if I needed anything, I said I wanted to see my sister, but this wish was not granted. She was the only person on this earth who truly cared about me. She understood me. She was my only family. And at this rate, it was possible I would never see her again. I wanted to avoid that at any cost, but how could I get home? Eventually, I decided I would pretend to obey them. I swallowed everything they gave me and never disobeyed. Everything I did, all of it was for sister. I looked down at the pills in my hand and imagined that they were candies from my beloved sister. No matter how disgusting they tasted, I would happily eat a gift from her. After that, sure enough, I was finally allowed to see my sister, but as happy as it made me, I was too lethargic to express my feelings. My sister seemed deeply concerned about me. Gretel, is there anything you need? Anything I can do for you? I slowly shook my head. As long as she was with me, I didn't need anything else. Gretel. I could tell she wanted to console me, to cheer me up. Don't cry, okay? I'm here for you. I'll protect you, I promise. Only in my sister's warm embrace did I finally feel at peace. When I returned home, the person who claimed to be my father said the whole family would live together for the time being. When I asked him what about your job, he said I'll figure something out. You're more important right now. I'm sorry I haven't been around more. I was so annoyed. He was getting in the way of my peaceful life with my sister. She was my family, not these other people. But if I said that out loud, I'd get thrown right back out of this house and I couldn't risk that. So instead I quietly accepted it. I needed to go back to acting like the perfect son. No, I needed to be even more perfect. Besides, I knew my parents would go back to the city sooner or later. They were all talk. If it came down to a choice between me or their jobs, I knew I didn't stand a chance. But I didn't mind. I was fine with it. At least that way things could go back to normal. The only person I needed was my sister. This family is fucked up. As for my sister, she stayed home with me for the rest of my suspension. When I asked her about college, she simply smiled and said, I'm staying right here with you. I was so happy to know that I was her top priority. After spending time apart from her, I made some important discoveries. I realized exactly how much I needed her, and I realized how she saw me. Aha! During my suspension, she offered to tutor me, same as usual, but I declined. Truth be told, I wanted her to teach me all kind of things, but if I let her, we'd end up right back where we were before. And for her sake, I needed to change bit by bit. She was always kind to me, but if she ever truly lost faith in me, I would lose my place in this family. I would lose everything. So I couldn't just smooch off her kindness. If anything, I needed her to depend on me. Ideally to the point that she couldn't function without me. Okay. I wanted her to need me as badly as I needed her. That way I could ensure that she would never turn against me. That way I would never be abandoned. That way I would never be rejected. But apparently I wasn't the only one who changed. After my 2-week suspension was up, I went to school to find out everyone looked at me differently. All the teachers and classmates who once sung my praises now avoided my gaze and kept me at arm's length. Evidently I was now on par with that delinquent. How revolting. These people didn't know the first thing about what happened that day, as if these worthless worms could possibly comprehend how I felt. I ate some candy to suppress my anger, then read my textbooks between classes. As I grew calm, I started to think, maybe I should have acted out a lot sooner. That way I wouldn't have been forced to humor those plebeian creatures all this time. Oh, hi, Gretel. After school, I found my sister waiting for me by the front gates. She stood out like a sore thumb, and I was surprised to see her there. I thought I'd come get you. Let's go home. Although she didn't say it directly, I could tell she was worried about me. I cursed myself for troubling her, but deep down I was delighted. Suppressing my feelings, I remained outwardly calm and accepted her proposal. On the way home, she asked me about my day, so I lied and said everything was fine. I didn't tell her or my parents how people were treating me at school. I could dress them up by saying I didn't want to worry them or something, but really I was just ashamed of it. I would have rather offed myself than admit I was being ostracized. Incidentally, rumor had it that my victim had since become a shut-in. Served him right as far as I was concerned. But at the same time I envied him. Unlike me, that piece of trash had real biological parents who loved him and refused to abandon him no matter what. God, it pissed me off. And every time I had a mood swing, I ate some candy. The more I ate, the more addicted I got. Sure enough, once my parents had decided that things had settled down, they went back to the city. Now the only people left in the house were me, my sister, and my brother. But once my brother saw that I was behaving like a good boy, he went back to his own house nearby. At last I could have my sister all to myself. On the surface, things had gone back to normal, but it wasn't quite the same. From the bottom of my heart, I wished we could stay like this forever. Time flew by, and soon 6 months had passed since the incident. The two of us had gone back to our happy life together. By this point, I had learned how to handle my sister. I needed to get aggressive and take the initiative. A little salt to enhance the sweetness.
今日僕
Oh, we saw this!
クラスメートの女の子に
We saw this from her
告白さ
perspective.
れたんです。
Confessed what?
好きです、付き合ってくださいってやつです。
Oh, haha, cool. Wait, is that why you were late leaving school today?
はい。放課後に呼び出されました。
None of this was true. No one would have dared to ask me out prior to my little incident, and that was doubly true now. But my sister didn't notice, so she took me at my word and frowned.
姉さんと違って可愛い子でした。おとなしくて、いかにも守ってあ
Aha,
げ
so
た
all
く
of
なる。
this was a lie.
でも、断りました。
What? You did? How come? This time her voice went up an octave as her eyes widened. Silly girl.
スイーツと同じですよ。美味しいものを食べれば食べるほど、味
Funny.
覚は研ぎ澄まされている。
Funny.
そうなる
Now we get to see all of this from his perspective
と満足。
and what he was thinking. Okay.
姉さんと一緒にいると、要求する基準値が上がるんです。
Wait, so you turned her down because she doesn't measure up compared to me. I almost laughed aloud at her arrogance, but the fact remained she was right. So I rose to my feet, pinched her nose, and scolded.
だから言ったんですよ。姉さんバカって。
Little. Her jewel eyes sparkled brighter and brighter. They say love is blind, but frankly I was surprised my perfect sister was still naive enough to believe some guys' lies. I long since realized that my sister's love for me was romantic. The way she looked at me, the way she behaved when I was around, all of it suggested that she was in love with me. It was clear from the way she overreacted to everything I said or did. And of course, I was sincerely delighted that she felt that way about me. None of the other girls could possibly hold a candle to her. Compared to my sister's sparkle, the other jewels were mere pebbles. That said, I couldn't very well encourage her crush. The second I reciprocated, he would stop being brother and sister. As her brother, I maintained a tenuous connection to her sparkle, and if I stopped being her brother, that connection would be severed. That being said, I couldn't let some other guy have her either. I didn't want her to be vulnerable around any other men the way she was with me. The thought made me realize how relieved I was to have a romantic interest. I wanted her to stay in love with me forever. But the happy times were fleeting, like a phantom, and they swiftly came to an end. One day after school, I found my sister surrounded by human garbage, so I ran right over and put a stop to it. My sister reached out and touched the maggot's face. She was so clueless. She had no idea that even her smallest actions would have massive impact on these worthless subhuman creatures. But when it rains it pours, as they say, and when we got home, my least favorite person, my brother, was waiting for us. He warned me not to overdose on candy, but I ignored him. Maybe he should have thought about that before he prescribed it to me. Why did these people infuriate me so? A short while later, another incident occurred. It happened on the day my sister decided not to walk me to school. That morning when she gave me my packed lunch, she told me she wanted us to walk home separately from now on too. Evidently, she mistakenly thought I found it suffocating. Who could have put that idea in her head? Was it Wolfie, that nosy creep? I wanted to roll my eyes, but instead I remained calm.
グレーテル。
赤ずきんさん
That night I found an unusual visitor standing outside my house.
何してるんですか
It was very peculiar to see him here.
別に何も。
He averted his gaze and hurried off. I found it suspicious, but decided to shrug it off.
これは
In the living room, I noticed the first aid kit sitting on a table. My heart pounded in my chest. I could tell that someone had used some of our disinfectant and gauze. I looked up at the ceiling. Her shoes were sitting on the shoe rack, so I knew she was here. The faint scent of soap lingered in the room. I peered into the bathroom. No one was in sight, but I found my sister's clothes. I picked them up and noticed they were covered in dirt stains. Sirens blared in my mind. I hurried upstairs just as my sister walked out of her room. As soon as I laid eyes on her, my voice faltered. Her beautiful face was all bandaged up and it hurt to look at. Oh, this? I tripped and fell. She answered in a playful tone, but I could tell it was forced. She always did this when she was trying to hide something. Nope. She shook her head. I noticed she was carrying a large suitcase. She must have been planning to sneak away somewhere behind my back. No, I'm not. I was sick of her trying to play dumb, so I raised my voice. She flinched. Nothing, okay? Then she wrapped her arms around me. There's nothing to worry about. I put my hands on her shoulders and pushed her away. Gretel. Then I grabbed her arm and pushed her down on the bed so she couldn't bolt. We saw all this. Putting her beneath me, I started my inspection. Her cheek, her arms, her palms, and lastly her thighs. Each time I touched her, she squirmed. I yanked up her top. A big red bruise had formed on her skin. We literally just read all this. No. No. I wasn't. I'm fine. I brought it upon myself, that's all. Okay. I'm not as perfect as you think I am, Gretel. Don't give me that. If you're not perfect, then what does it make me? Trash? It's not that. Well, this is also one way to get the most out of your recorded scenes. On my way home, a stranger tried to pull me into the car, but Red rescued me. Yes. I did, see? I'm all patched up. She smiled and gestured to the gauze. No, I... My voice shook. No, not just my voice. My whole body was shaking. Gretel. My sight blurred and a single drop fell into her shapely chest. She reached out to touch my cheek, but I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed her outstretched hand and kissed it. Like, okay, we get his thoughts now, but it's still very much the same scene. I held her and sobbed. She put her arms around me and held me back. My dear angelic sister. She had suffered far worse than I had. She was in physical pain, and yet she still put me first. How could I possibly make it up to her? After a long moment, I got up. I had a job to do. Fortunately, I had brought the jar of candy. The jar of candy with me just in case. Gretel. I picked out 2 candies and brought them to her mouth. She shook her head, refusing, so I spoke to her gently to avoid frightening her. I didn't have time for a long involved conversation, so I put the candy in my mouth and kissed her. She put up a fight, but I pushed her tongue out of the way and forced the candy in. Even after she swallowed them, the sweet taste lingered, and I dearly wanted to share it with her. It was my first kiss. My sister's face turned red and her chest started to heave, possibly from the lack of oxygen. Her jewel eyes were damp and gleaming. I administered candy to her again and again. I couldn't stop myself, but she didn't resist.
すみません。僕たちは兄弟なのに、こんなことして。でも、今日は。
I wonder how he managed to think of these kind of pills as sweet candy. Over time, her eyelids grew heavy. Evidently, the drug had kicked in. Like, I had one time as a child, I had to take some that they had made especially for kids, so they gave it a cherry taste, but it tasted so horrible and artificial, obviously. I'd rather, you know, take the normal stuff. Also, honestly, I'm just trying to find a place to make a good stop, but he's just going, so... I planted one final tiny kiss on her lips, then the jar fell and a candy rainbow scattered all over the floor. Now it truly felt like a nightmare. Grateful. When she was rendered immobile, I left the house. Do we get a flashback? Yeah, we get a flashback for him rounding up all of these guys as well, but I don't have the time for that today. I'm sorry about that. We're going to have to continue right there next time. It's wild. It's very wild. This game is very wild. I don't know how else to say it. It's like, okay. I feel like we are not totally sane in this route. Also, thank you, train. Very nice. But like, why? Also, how are they planning on letting this continue? Because right now they're in this weird, you know, how it was with Cinderella, how the wizard was like, oh, I put a spell on him. And then it was kind of open-ended. Is that also what's going to happen here? Because I don't get it. How are they planning on ending this? Okay, yeah, you're both living in this weird cottage now. Also, one of them definitely needs his anti-anxiety pills, but a normal amount of it. Drug dealer. No. Oh no. That's not good. Drug dealer ending. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll actually. We will be playing this game again on Wednesday as usual. Then we're back to the usual schedule as well. I feel sorry for him now. Like, you know, at the beginning tonight I was like, wow, you're cringy, but now I just feel sorry. It's a little fucked in this fairy tale, but I'm guessing, you know, all of them are kinda not the way the fairy tale would usually go. Maybe the true end of every root comes at the very end. Oh, you mean like in the last game? Maybe. I have not spoiled myself on that yet, and I'm very proud because content-wise, I definitely have to look into it a little, because I had read something about, like, you know, the assault thing, but I wasn't sure which route it was, because I'm not comfortable with that, and I don't really want to put stuff like that on stream either. It's not... I don't like it. I don't like it. But we've managed. I don't think there's any more stuff like that in his route this now. So we live? Question mark. But for now, I'll send you guys off. Thank you for the hydrate time. Yeah, I definitely need to drink. There's so many trains. This is the difference between me streaming on a Sunday and me streaming on a Monday. The difference in the trains. The amount of trains that come by. But yeah, that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. I'll say we raid V again. V is playing Yakuza 0. I think. So that sounds like a great idea. And then I'll see you on Wednesday. As usual. More people driving trains late at night. Someone has to drive them. Someone has to drive them. The trains. But yeah. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for staying with me during this thing. It feels good to stream these games, because that way I can, you know, say out loud problems I feel I have with a game, or like just scream. Because usually it's just like I have to explain the entire plot to someone if I want to rant about it, because they don't know the game. But this way, at least I can rant about it because you're all here, staying with me, experiencing it with me. So that's nice. But for now, let me quickly switch the screen and put on the ending song. And then I say it a third or fourth time. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I wish you all a very good night. And bye bye. Everyone fleeing to see you next time. Whee! Bye bye.